When the elder of the Wan Shou sect saw Lin Feng's swords, he looked glum, but at that moment he had already condensed all his energy into his attack. He couldn't retreat anymore. When the elder of the Wan Shou sect saw Lin Feng's swords, he looked glum, but at that moment he had already condensed all his energy into his attack. He couldn't retreat anymore. A terrifying sharp sound whistled in the air. The elder of the Wan Shou sect was surrounded by what seemed to be an endless amount of qi and force, as if nobody could stop him anymore. Lacerate. Lin Feng only said one word, and the pure qi sword in his right hand started attracting rays of sunlight as it slowly started to rise. It was filled with power. His sword looked extremely slow, but no matter how one tried to escape from it, it remained in constant pursuit. Boom! Incredible force and qi invaded the atmosphere. It seemed like the entire sky was going to be consumed. It then shot out in every direction and filled the atmosphere. The sound of a bellowing ox spread through the air. The light from the sword of the rising sun slowly dispersed. The sword attack had been crushed. Besides, before everyone's eyes was a gigantic ox illusion soaring into the skies. It seemed to possess an infinite strength. The elder of the third Xian Qi layer is incredibly strong, thought the crowd. That ox spirit had a terrifying strength. Even though they were far from the battle, they could still sense the ox's incredible energy. The energy of that ox spirit had the power to tear through any attack, like a hot knife through butter. After that, they couldn't even see the sword of the rising sun anymore, but they could see another dazzling light. It contained the rose-like color of a setting sun. Lin Feng's left hand was holding a scorching sword, which was slowly turning into the sword of the setting sun. The sword qi was lacerating the entire atmosphere. It was diffusing an endless stream of sunlight. The scorching sword then descended from the vault of heaven. Anything that tried to prevent it from moving down was instantly lacerated. The ox spirit was also lacerated. It blocked the sword of the rising sun a moment before, so it had already lost the power required to block the next attack. Wild ox collision! Roared the elder of the Wan Shou sect when he saw that the ox spirit had been lacerated. His face looked ferocious and hideous. He started to release a monstrous amount of pure qi, and his spirit formed into another ox which soared into the sky. Humph! Groaned Lin Feng coldly. His face looked expressionless and ice-cold. In his right hand, he condensed another pure qi sword. When the crowd saw that sword, they felt like they were watching an incredible hero, as if everything he did was unexpected, as if he was destined to overcome any obstacle. That's a different sword again, thought the crowd, absolutely astonished. Lin Feng was too skilled. Lin Feng could unleash a different sword attack with each of his hands as if he was two people fighting in perfect harmony. Even two strong sword cultivators couldn't necessarily carry out such a perfect synchronization. Everything was happening in such a short time. At the moment when the gigantic ox illusion and the scorching sword collided, another sword descended as well. It was illuminating the elder's face. At that moment, the elder of the Wan Shou sect felt a strange sensation coming from the sword. He had the feeling that he had grown very old and was no longer needed in the world anymore. He had the feeling that the world belonged to Lin Feng, a young man. The elder felt like his time was coming to an end. The energy in that sword made the elder feel calm and reassured, as if everything must come to an end. It was affected his innermost emotions. "Get back!" shouted a voice extremely loudly, which abruptly made the elder's heart start to pound. He quickly sobered up and his facial expression suddenly drastically changed. Lin Feng's sword was already in front of him. Boom! The elder's facial expression had completely changed. He immediately released all his pure qi to block the incoming sword. However, the sword continued descending and his pure qi was lacerated. Back! The elder started to frantically retreat. The situation was extremely dangerous. He felt a shiver run down his spine. How dangerous! He had been extremely close to death. If nobody had called out to him, Lin Feng's sword would have cut him down. "You think you can escape?" said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. Just like the wind, Lin Feng arrived next to the elder and his sword of the setting sun continued to fall while absorbing all the light in the atmosphere. It almost seemed like night. How quick! Lin Feng was much faster than the elder. The elder couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Elder! The two other cultivators rushed towards Lin Feng to attack him. In Lin Feng's eyes, a bestially evil light could be seen. His purple snake spirit roared and moved towards those two cultivators and blocked their path. Break! The one with the evil tiger spirit immediately moved towards the purple spirit and started attacking like a madman. Lin Feng didn't take notice of that. His jet-black eyes looked as expressionless and ice-cold as before. A cold light could be seen inside those eyes. Then, Lin Feng suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight and seemed to merge into the darkness created by his sword. Die! A sudden shout drew people's attention. Suddenly a cross mark appeared in front of the elder. That cross was dazzling and powerful. The elder started shaking violently from head to toe and an acute and intense pain spread across his skin. Die! Shouted Lin Feng again. Just like the wind, he arrived in front of the elder, and the cross crashed into the elder's chest. Lin Feng's movements seemed like he was floating on the wind. In the blink of an eye, an incredible rain of blood burst into the air. It looked incredible. The elder of the Wanshou sect started shaking from head to toe. He then lowered his head and looked down at his chest. There was a huge cross-shaped wound. At that moment, his chest had been mutilated by Lin Feng. Dread and terror invaded his heart. Was he going to die? He was suddenly feeling regret. He never thought his life was going to end because of his actions today. Elder! Shouted one of the cultivators. When the one who had the evil tiger spirit saw that the elder's chest had been cut open, he looked furious as well as shocked. He immediately threw himself towards Lin Feng. His eyes looked ice-cold and bloodthirsty. Lin Feng didn't look affected at all. He was calmly sensing the brutal energy approaching him. He waited until that brutal energy was a breath away and then swiftly moved. His body streaked across the sky. His speed was incredible. Lin Feng was moving like the wind and the sword in his hand also seemed to follow the wind. He was in fusion with his sword, so his sword was like part of his body as it moved without resistance. Psh! A light and subtle sound emerged in the air, and a thread of blood shot into the air. The one who had the evil tiger spirit was shocked. He wasn't much weaker than the elder, but at that moment, a thread of blood appeared on the cultivator's throat and the blood didn't stop flowing. The crowd was astonished. They were both dead. In the blink of an eye, two cultivators of the third Xian Qi layer had died. One had his chest mangled and the other had his throat slit. Blood was raining down from the sky. Those two bodies heavily plummeted from the sky and lifelessly crashed into the ground. The crowd shivered. Lin Feng had killed two cultivators of the third Xian Qi layer so easily. They hadn't even managed to harm a hair on Lin Feng's head. When the one with the snake spirit saw that, he was astonished. He just watched the two bodies lifelessly fall down to the ground, and when he saw that, his heart twitched. They had died, they were both dead. Besides, the winged tiger was still fighting. It was fighting against the two cultivators of the second Xian Qi layer and it had already killed one of them. Lin Feng and the winged tiger were both terrifyingly powerful. Escape. There were only two people left at that moment. They both had the same thought, they just wanted to escape. They couldn't deal with Lin Feng. It was already too late for the others, they couldn't fight anymore, otherwise they were doomed to die, they could only escape. The one fighting against Lin Feng released some pure qi which immediately shot towards Lin Feng. Besides, at the same time, he moved as well. However, he didn't rush towards Lin Feng. Instead, he turned around and tried to escape. Escaping was the only chance he had to continue living. But could he escape? Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi hadn't moved a single time. Immediately after, they prepared to move. When they saw the cultivator who wanted to escape, they smiled coldly. At the moment when they wanted to move, just like the wind, Lin Feng rushed towards the escaping cultivator, which surprised the two old men. Lin Feng was trying to prevent them from having to act. They didn't need to help him stop one person from escaping. This made them smile. No! A horrible scream filled with dread spread through the atmosphere. That person could feel a cold wind approaching from behind, which terrified him. However, since he had come to attack the academy, he was already doomed. A sword moving with the wind descended as a bloody line appeared between his eyebrows. Immediately after, the crowd started shaking. They only saw the cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer, who was trying to escape, get split in half by Lin Feng's sword. Blood once again poured from the sky. The scene was incredible. The last one had died. 3 cultivators of the third Xian Qi layer had died. They were all killed by Lin Feng. The last one had died. 3 cultivators of the third Xian Qi layer had died. They were all killed by Lin Feng. At the same time, the winged tiger roared. It also killed the last remaining cultivator of the second Xian Qi layer. In the air, there were only one person and his ferocious beast remaining. Lin Feng and the winged tiger. The outcome of the battle made many people grow speechless. It was astonishing. They had never thought that Lin Feng would be able to kill all the members of the Wanshou sect. 12 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer and 5 Xian level beasts. That was a terrifying group of cultivators. Anywhere else in Xueyu, they would have been considered a terrifying force, but at that moment, they had all been slaughtered by Lin Feng. None of them were left alive. Everything had happened just like Lin Feng said. The Wanshou sect wanted to kill Lin Feng and all the people who were close to him. They had planned to kill all of them, but in the end, Lin Feng killed all of the attacking members, leaving none alive. They had wanted to kill Lin Feng's friends, and even Meng Qing. Lin Feng would show no mercy. He immediately decided that he was going to massacre them. None of them would live to tell the tale. Lin Feng glanced at the crowd with his pitch-black eyes, which made people's hearts pound brutally. Those ice-cold eyes were terrifying. They were wondering what happened to Lin Feng for him to become so powerful. At that moment, Meng Qing was looking at Lin Feng with a resplendent smile on her face. She didn't look cold anymore, she just had a beautiful, sweet and happy smile on her face. Meng Qing's smile gushed into Lin Feng's heart just like a warm breeze. Lin Feng had made rivers of blood flow, but it wasn't important. All that mattered to him was that Meng Qing's coldness was gradually disappearing. He had managed to melt the ice around her heart. Lin Feng felt gratified and pleasantly surprised. All his work was worth it. Back then, Meng Qing had always been protecting him, and now it was different. He now had the power to protect the woman he loved. He couldn't let anyone harm her. "I'm sorry that I made you go through all of this," said Lin Feng in a soft tone. Meng Qing smiled and shook her head. She didn't feel unpleased at all, she just felt a very warm sensation in her heart. Was that how it felt to be protected by the man she loved? She finally knew how it felt. It felt so sweet, it was a wonderful feeling. If Lin Feng could protect her forever, she would be willing to give up on her cultivation, even if it took her a million years to recover, it would be worth it. Cough cough. A light cough interrupted Lin Feng and Meng Qing's intimate moment. Lin Feng suddenly looked embarrassed. He turned his head and saw the 2 old men. They weren't standing very far from the couple. He smiled and said, "Mr. Qi, Mr. Hua, why did you both come to the Imperial City? There are high-ranking soldiers of the Xian Qi layer in Yangzhou City now, so they can protect the city. Mr. Hua and I were bored, so we both wanted to come," said Mr. Qi in a low voice while smiling. Lin Feng was stupefied and staring at Mr. Qi. "How many uncles have broken through to the Xian Qi layer?" asked Lin Feng. "All of them," replied Mr. Qi, which astonished Lin Feng. Immediately after, a radiant smile appeared on his face. Ren Qing Kuang and the other officers had all broken through to the Xian Qi layer. There were 3 officers of the Xianqi layer in Yangzhou City. Soon after, some of the Qi Xia troops would also start to break through to the Xianqi layer. No wonder Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua felt they could both come to the imperial city and let off some steam. It was indeed a wonderful thing. Lin Feng felt happy to hear the news. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi had helped Ren Qingquang and the others improve their cultivation by leaps and bounds. They would be able to help even more people break through to the Xianqi layer in the future. The Qi Xia troops would be a power that could sweep across Shuiyu someday. That was also Lin Feng's goal. Lin Feng, let's go somewhere else and talk, said Mr. Hua while talking to Lin Feng, who then nodded. The crowd was still there looking at them, which didn't make them feel relaxed when talked with each other. Immediately after, Lin Feng, Meng Qing and the 2 old men walked away. When the crowd saw Lin Feng leave, they sighed. Back when Lin Feng had come to the Celestial Academy for the first time, nobody had thought that he would be able to achieve such incredible things. Lin Feng had achieved such great things. This battle was just another page in Lin Feng's adventures. Alone with his ferocious beast, they had managed to massacre a group of 11 cultivators of the Xianqi layer and 5 Xian-level beasts. Amongst them, there had been 3 cultivators of the 3rd Xianqi layer, but they had also all been killed by Lin Feng. Lin Feng's name would spread through the imperial city once again. Besides, it wouldn't create less of a buzz than the time when he had come for Lutsang Lan with the Qi Xia troops. From that moment on, the strongest cultivators of Shuiyu wouldn't be able to ignore Lin Feng's existence anymore. With his natural abilities, Lin Feng would, sooner or later, catch up with them and even surpass them. In fact, everybody was thinking that way. Lin Feng's group had killed 12 of the Wanshou sect's cultivators of the Xianqi layer that came to the Celestial Academy. The news would spread extremely quickly in the imperial city. The greatest spheres of influence would all have different reactions when hearing the news. The only common feeling amongst the spheres of influence would be shock. Lin Feng was growing and he was becoming the man whom everybody had anticipated. At the Yu clan, Yu Qingshan was observing a painting hanging on a wall. It was a portrait. It was the portrait of a beautiful woman with a resplendent smile. Behind Yu Qingshan, Yu Tianming was also calmly standing and looking at the portrait. He didn't say anything, he just quietly looked towards the portrait. She used to be the top disciple of the Yu clan, but these days, she wasn't with the clan. She hadn't returned to the Yu clan for over 18 years. Yu Tianming knew that the old man standing in front of him was furious about what had happened with her, but as before, nobody could replace her in his heart. Even his grandson, who was dedicated to practicing cultivation and who was catching up with her at full speed, couldn't replace her inside his heart. The old man had pushed himself so hard that he had white hair, but he was doing that for her. Yu Tianming also knew that Yu Qingshan came to see that portrait more and more often. It was because of a young man who was in the imperial city. Meng He, your son is already a grown man. Besides, he's not weaker than him. Now, you must be extremely proud. You must still be convinced that your choice was the right one. I, his grandfather, was I wrong, or was I right? Whispered the old man. He didn't even know who he was directing the question towards. He remained silent for a while, his eyes were filled with determination, and he then continued to speak. Meng He, no matter what you think, I am convinced that everything I did was for the sake of the Yu clan. I haven't done anything wrong. I can guarantee that I was in the right, you were the one at fault. When the old man finished talking, he abruptly turned away from the portrait and looked at Yu Tianming in a calm and solemn way. He then said, Tianming, I want you to strive for victory at the great competition of Shuiyu. You have to defeat Lin Feng. You must win, you are not allowed to lose. Yu Tianming was surprised. He looked at the old man yet didn't look that convinced. Yu Tianming nodded and said, sounding confident, Grandpa, I will defeat Lin Feng. I will defeat him in front of everyone. Auntie will see it too. Indeed. Nodded Yu Qingshan. He then immediately started walking towards another part of the room. Grandpa, The Wanshou sect has been defeated, but more strong cultivators will appear, shouldn't we do something? Suddenly asked Yu Tianming. No need, the Wanshou sect can't do anything against him, said the old man indifferently, which surprised Yu Tianming. Immediately after, he slightly nodded. Indeed, he had already drawn so many people's attention and was already in a dangerous situation. She was obviously following the entire situation. How could his auntie allow anyone to hurt her son? The Wanshou sect wouldn't be able to do anything. Yu Qingshan had faith in her, he had faith in his own daughter. At the Wanshou sect, in a large hall filled with people. Everybody there was completely silent, which made the atmosphere feel extremely tense. At the Wanshou sect, in a large hall filled with people. Everybody there was completely silent, which made the atmosphere feel extremely tense. Nobody was talking and nobody dared to breathe loudly. At that moment, Teng Wuyao was sitting on a throne. His facial expression looked ice cold. The throne on which he was sitting was giving a domineering aura as well. It was scary. He had learned that the disciples and elders he sent to kill Lin Feng's friends had all been killed. The mission had been a complete failure. The 12 cultivators and 5 ferocious beasts he had sent to the Celestial Academy were some of his most valued members. They were the main force in the battle against Lin Feng's friends, but they were all massacred, and it was said that Lin Feng had killed all of them alone with the help of his ferocious beast. They had all died. Not a single one was left with their life. That absolute defeat hadn't only led to the loss of some of the best members in the sect, but it was also an extreme humiliation. The Wanshou sect had lost a great deal of face. Lin Feng had killed the entire group in front of a crowd of witnesses. That was an incredible humiliation. The Wanshou sect's reputation was ruined. That was a direct attack against Teng Wuyao's reputation. Wu Zhen, his son, was a genius, but in the 9-Dragon Mountain chain, he was chasing Lin Feng and then his chi suddenly disappeared. He hadn't returned for a long time, but Lin Feng was still alive and had returned to the city. That was the bitter reality. Maybe Lin Feng really killed Wu Zhen. At the same time, the patriarch of the Wanshou sect had sent a group of its members to kill Lin Feng's friends, which was already an exaggerated response. That was a threat to all those who opposed the sect, but in the end the people he had sent were killed. They had all died during their attack. It was a terrible defeat for the patriarch, but the worst part was that he would be the subject of all the jokes in the imperial city. Patriarch, I will go and kill him, said someone, breaking the silence. The one who just spoke was Wu Qing. He was the 3rd ranked of the 8 high officials. Everybody was nodding. Wu Qing was the only disciple who could come back with Lin Feng's life and regain some of the prestige for the sect. Wu Qing would have no problem killing Lin Feng. But Teng Wuyao remained silent. He then slightly shook his head and said, Wu Qing, your job isn't to kill him, your job is to increase your ranking within the high officials and win the Shuiyu Great Competition. Now, you should go and cultivate in peace and make as many improvements as possible, so you can rise in the ranking. The Wanshou sect will need you in the future. Wu Qing listened to Teng Wuyao in a calm and solemn way. Immediately after, he nodded and moved back. Indeed, he had to focus on his goal to rise in the ranking. He had to becoming the strongest of the 8 high officials. That was his mission. If somebody else could kill Lin Feng, it would provide a better solution. Teng Wushan, shouted Teng Wuyao. Teng Wushan took a step forwards and said, Patriarch, take some people with you and go to the Celestial Academy. Then bring his head back so we can feed it to the beasts, said Teng Wuyao in a cold and detached tone. Immediately after, he stood up and started to walk away. Roger, Patriarch, said Teng Wushan while nodding seriously. Lin Feng had to die. This time, they would definitely come back with Lin Feng's head and show the entire Shuiyu country that the Wanshou sect couldn't be provoked so easily. In the main hall, there was a young man who had a complex expression in his eyes. It was Kuang Shi. Everything was happening because he provoked Lin Feng when he went to steal the vein of the earth. He thought that he would be able to rob Lin Feng of everything and force him to leave. The most ridiculous part was that in the end he had failed to steal the vein of the earth, and on top of that the Wanshou sect had lost many of its core members. Besides, the young man that Kuang Shi had chosen to offend was extremely famous in Shuiyu. Kuang Shi couldn't even compete with him anymore. He was in a dilemma. Lin Feng and he were from two different worlds. In the past, he acted extremely arrogantly in front of Lin Feng and attempted to rob him, only now he was realizing how ridiculous he had been. A large group of people belonging to the Wanshou sect was going to the Celestial Academy to kill Lin Feng. Some other people were following them too. It seemed like they had to kill Lin Feng that time. It seemed like this time, the group of members of the Wanshou sect were much stronger and filled with the most powerful elements of the sect. They were definitely going to kill Lin Feng. How was he supposed to stop them? Those cultivators of the Xian Qi layer were either flying through the sky or riding ferocious beasts. They were extremely quick. They did not need much time to arrive at the Celestial Academy. When the members of the Celestial Academy saw that large group of people in the sky, they were astonished. They had come again. The members of the Wanshou sect hadn't waited before sending another group, they immediately sent a stronger group after they received the news. At that moment, Lin Feng was in his living quarters. He was calmly speaking with Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi Yi Shui, then rushed over in a state of panic to inform them that the Wanshou sect had come with a larger and more powerful group. It seemed they were furious. But Lin Feng only frowned slightly. In the blink of an eye, his facial expression returned to normal again. He then smiled coldly. The Wanshou sect really refused to give up until they had finished digging their own grave. Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, are you interested in getting some exercise? Smiled Lin Feng, which surprised the old men. That guy was still unperturbed. Young master, the vice patriarch of the Wanshou sect, Teng Wushan, is part of the group. You shouldn't go, said Yi Shui when she heard that Lin Feng didn't take the threat seriously. She was surprised by Lin Feng's actions. Lin Feng was surprisingly talking as if it was a joke. Could it be that Lin Feng didn't know that those people had come to kill him? I know, Yi Shui. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me, said Lin Feng while smiling and standing up. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi smiled at each other and then followed Lin Feng. They both passed through the stone door. The two old men were wondering what kind of exercise Lin Feng was talking about. In the air next to a cultivation tower were Teng Wushan with a large group of people. All of them looked ice-cold and deadly energy surrounded their bodies. It was said that Lin Feng had killed 12 of their comrades and 5 of their beasts in the academy, thus, this was also the place where they were going to behead him. Lin Feng, come out and die, said a voice which echoed through the sky. It was filled with thick deadly energy and it echoed into the distance, enveloping the entire academy. Those people are extremely aggressive, thought some of the students of the academy while frowning. They were shouting so furiously that the sound waves were painful to the ears. Besides, they were standing next to the cultivation tower and many people were practicing inside. Even though the sound insulation in the cultivation rooms was good, that person had shouted so loud that it definitely disturbed the practicing cultivators. The Wanshou sect was looking down on all the members of the Celestial Academy. Besides, when facing so many strong cultivators, would Lin Feng come out? The answer was certainly. Bunch of arrogant morons, said a faintly discernible voice which also echoed into the distance. When the group heard it, their ears twitched. They could still distinctly hear the insult echoing in the atmosphere. They turned around and saw a person slowly approaching. It was a young man. Nobody dared to look down on him, there was only respect. When two people were of similar cultivations, the weaker might envy the stronger person, but when two cultivators were in completely different leagues, the weaker wouldn't even waste time envying the other because they knew that they would never be able to catch up, so all they could do was admire that person's strength. For many people at the Celestial Academy, that was the case with Lin Feng. It was clear to them that Lin Feng belonged to a different world than them. Lin Feng's natural abilities were too terrifying. Teng Wuxian frowned, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He hadn't thought that Lin Feng would dare to show his face, and on top of that he was even insulting them. That guy was really insufferably arrogant. Lin Feng, you killed members of my sect, I will bring your head back to the Wanshou sect and feed it to the beasts as compensation, said Teng Wuxian while staring at Lin Feng in an evil way. Teng Wuxian was the first person of the Wanshou sect who encountered Lin Feng. It dated back to when they destroyed the Yunhai sect. Back then, Teng Wuxian already had a strange feeling, but he hadn't dared think that Lin Feng would, someday, reach such heights. And besides, if Lin Feng hadn't offended the Wanshou sect when he did, he would have been able to grow even stronger. Behead me and take my head back to the Wanshou sect to feed it to the beasts, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached while looking at the people in the sky. Lin Feng looked like he was about to burst into laughter because he found it amusing. Since that is the case, everybody come down. I am waiting for you to behead me, said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent, which made Teng Wuxian and the others frown, but immediately after, killing intent flashed through their eyes. Kill him, shouted Teng Wuxian in a deep voice. In a flash, he released his deadly energy. This time, the members of the Wanshou sect were not going to show any sign of courtesy. They immediately attacked Lin Feng. However, at that moment, a strange sound filled the air. It was the melody of a zither. When Lin Feng heard that zither melody, he smiled coldly. Were the Wanshou sect really foolish enough to think that nobody would help him in the Celestial Academy? The first time that the Wanshou sect had come to kill Lin Feng's friends, Lin Feng had rushed to stop them, but the Celestial Academy didn't intervene. The first time that the Wanshou sect had come to kill Lin Feng's friends, Lin Feng had rushed to stop them, but the Celestial Academy didn't intervene. However, this time, the Wanshou sect had come in great numbers and barged into their territory. Weren't they looking down on the Academy too much? Their behavior proved that they did not put the Academy in their eyes. They thought that the Celestial Academy didn't dare to stand in their way. But Lin Feng obviously knew that was not the case. He knew who was at the roots of the Academy. He also knew that, inside the Academy, there was an extremely strong cultivator who was hidden in the background, Yan Yupingsheng. Besides, Lin Feng and Yan Yupingsheng were extremely close. Yan Yupingsheng was a teacher and his two students, Wen Ao Shui and Duan Xinyi, were close to Lin Feng. Therefore, when Lin Feng heard that the Wanshou sect had brought a large group with murderous intentions, Lin Feng knew that Yan Yupingsheng wouldn't stay hidden. In fact, it was exactly like Lin Feng had anticipated. When he heard the sound of the zither, he knew that Yan Yupingsheng had come. Stop! Suddenly shouted Teng Wuxian. Instantly everybody stopped moving. They were wondering why they were interrupted. Stop! Teng Wuxian had shouted at them when he heard the zither, ordering them to stop. Who was the one playing the zither? Everybody turned around and looked in the direction where the melody was coming from. In the distance, a silhouette appeared on the horizon, and that person was moving towards them. That person was surrounded by a calm and tranquil qi, giving anyone who looked at him a feeling of calm and serenity. Teacher. Many people immediately recognized Yan Yupingsheng when they saw him. He was sitting on a cushion as he flew through the sky, which stupefied the crowd. Teacher is so amazing, thought many people surprised. Yan Yupingsheng usually gave people the feeling that he was a simple, indifferent and carefree man. They just knew that he loved playing the zither. People who knew how terrifyingly strong he was were very rare. Teng Wuxian looked at that carefree man and frowned. He looked at him and said, Venerable Mr. Yan Yu, this is between Lin Feng and the Wanshou sect. I hope that you will understand and will not get involved. The crowd suddenly shivered. The vice-patriarch of the Wanshou sect was calling him, Venerable Mr., which made the crowd swallow their saliva. They were speechless. Many members of the Wanshou sect didn't know who Yan Yupingsheng was, so they were surprised. The form of address Teng Wushan used to talk to Yan Yuping Sheng was surprising, but it seemed natural. At that moment, Yan Yuping Sheng glanced at Teng Wushan in an indifferent way. His fingers were still fluttering across the strings of the zither. The melody was gradually becoming more intense. The calmness of the melody contained murderous intentions which made Teng Wushan frown even more firmly. Between Lin Feng and you? Teng Wushan, you ought to know my status, said Yan Yuping Sheng indifferently. I know, you are the principal of the Celestial Academy, replied Teng Wushan, which made the crowd frown. Principal? Surprisingly, Yan Yuping Sheng was the principal of the Celestial Academy. The crowd was astonished. Nobody had ever thought of that. Lin Feng was also stupefied. The principal of the Celestial Academy was Yan Yuping Sheng? What about Duan Wuya then? Since you know that I am the principal of the Celestial Academy, I would like to ask you something. You barged into the academy in such a domineering and aggressive way, but have you ever thought about my opinion? The melody of the zither was growing colder and colder. Yan Yuping Sheng's voice was also colder, which made Teng Wushan's frown grow more intense. Venerable Mr. Yan Yu, Lin Feng has killed members of the Wanshou sect. The patriarch himself gave the order to kill Lin Feng, said Teng Wushan while narrowing his eyes. Very good, said Yan Yuping Sheng, sounding cold and detached. The Wanshou sect thinks they can look down on everyone. I didn't condemn Teng Wuyao, but against all expectations, you Teng Wushan surprisingly came here and threatened me with the name of Teng Wuyao. Go back and tell him to come in person, said Yan Yuping Sheng. At that moment, he was very calm, but his calmness didn't seem auspicious. Teng Wushan looked glum. He was silently staring at Yan Yuping Sheng. After looking pensive for a while, Teng Wushan opened his mouth again. Since it's that way, I will go and inform the patriarch. When he finished talking, Teng Wushan turned and left with his group. If they tried to attack Lin Feng and Yan Yuping Sheng got involved, they wouldn't have the ability to kill Lin Feng. The only option was for them to leave. Wait, said a voice sounding indifferent which surprised Teng Wushan. He stopped but didn't turn around and said, Venerable Mr. Yan Yu, is there anything else you would like? If you want to barge in, you barge in. If you want to leave, you just leave. What kind of place do you think my academy is? When Yan Yuping Sheng finished talking, he continued playing the zither. An oppressive qi emerged in the atmosphere. The music that started flowing in the atmosphere felt deadly as it invaded the ears. Retreat quickly. Teng Wushan's facial expression changed. He abruptly started to flee. When the members of the Wanshou sect saw that, all their silhouettes flickered. They all closely followed Teng Wushan. The deadly energy of the melody started revolving in the atmosphere. Threads of pure qi were emerging from the zither in large quantities. They then turned into a rain of pure qi. The threads were as sharp as swords as they flew through the air. Ayaha! Many horrible shrieks spread through the air. Many people were struck with an acute and violent pain that spread through their entire body. Their beasts were the main target of that zither rain, and they roared in agony. What a terrifying strength, thought the crowd when they saw that sharp zither rain. They were dazzled. Yan Yuping Sheng's was extremely strong. Next time you barge in here, you will suffer the same fate as your beasts, said Yan Yuping Sheng from the sky. Immediately after, the beasts of the Wanshou sect could be seen falling from the sky. They had died. The Wanshou sect had lost again. So many strong cultivators had come with the intention to kill Lin Feng and were being humiliated again. Yan Yuping Sheng had humiliated them this time. Teng Wushan's facial expression looked glum, ferocious and hideous. He looked hideously scary. Yan Yuping Sheng. Teng Wushan and the other silhouettes flickered. They were releasing a terrifying deadly qi. In such a short time, the Wanshou sect had been humiliated by Lin Feng, a junior, by the Yu clan, and then by Yan Yuping Sheng. On top of that, they had lost many cultivators of the Xian Qi layer and a great deal of ferocious beasts. Even their bones felt the pain of this humiliation. How could the Wanshou sect not be furious? When the crowd sensed the terrifying energy coming from the Wansho sect as they escaped into the distance, they moved farther away. The crowd didn't dare to provoke them. The members of the Wansho sect were like death gods at that moment. If anyone saw them, they instinctively moved out of the way. However, at that moment, someone was standing in front of them, motionless. "Get lost!" shouted Teng Wuxian furiously and immediately tried to punch the person blocking their path. His fist was unleashing his rage. That punch whistled through the air and was clearly aiming to kill the person. However, at the moment when that person was going to be struck by the punch, an incredibly sharp energy swept over the area. The energy of that punch was destroyed in an instant. "Huh!" Teng Wuxian frowned and stopped. He raised his hand and waved indicating that he all of the group to stop as well. "Your Excellency, who are you?" asked Teng Wuxian in a cold and detached tone. A moment before, that extremely sharp chi felt like sword energy. It had immediately destroyed the force unleashed by his punch. That person was probably extremely strong. "It's been a long time since someone tried to attack me," said the person naturally. That person then slowly turned around, and at that moment, Teng Wuxian frowned and his facial expression drastically changed. It was him, surprisingly, it was him. Teng Wuxian surprisingly dared to attack him. "I didn't know it was you, Your Excellency. I offended you, please forgive me." Nobody replied to Teng Wuxian. In the air, a deadly energy solidified itself into a sword. It then lacerated the air emitting whistling sounds. That move made Teng Wuxian's facial expression drastically fall. He shouted loudly, "Zhuge Wuqing, I was ignorant, I didn't mean to offend you. Is it necessary to act in such a way? You didn't know that it was me, but I came here precisely to wait for you," said Zhuge Wuqing, which astonished them. Zhuge Wuqing had been waiting for them. His incredible sword was lacerating everything. He moved and his entire body looked just like a sword. His silhouette flickered and he disappeared from sight. A sword whistled and streaked across the sky, and each time it appeared, blood splashed into the air. "Die!" Zhuge Wuqing surprisingly attacked them. He was releasing a cruel and merciless deadly energy. Each time he moved, a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer would die. Zhuge Wuqing was slaughtering the entirety of the large group. In the air, nothing else could exist. There was only Zhuge Wuqing's sword energy. The members of the Wansho sect didn't even know why they were being butchered. The setting sun looked like blood. A bloodthirsty sword energy had invaded the atmosphere, but now the sword energy had vanished. The atmosphere was quiet and desolate. The setting sun looked like blood. A bloodthirsty sword energy had invaded the atmosphere, but now the sword energy had vanished. The atmosphere was quiet and desolate. At that moment, only one cultivator from the Wansho sect was left. Teng Wuxian was the only person remaining. All the Xian Qi layer cultivators and Xian level beasts of the Wansho sect had already died. They had all died. The corpses of the cultivators had already hit the ground. There were no signs of life coming from the pile of bodies. The ordinary people on the ground had seen what happened. They felt like it must be a dream, it couldn't possibly be real. They had all died. Those members of the Wansho sect had come in the most domineering and imposing fashion. They were all furious. They thought that nobody would have dared to provoke their group filled with those of the Xian Qi layer, but in the end, only Teng Wuxian was left alive. This was truly shocking. Teng Wuxian himself couldn't even believe what happened. He was dumbstruck. At that moment, he was both furious and grieving for his comrades, but he was barely able to protect himself. A beam of sword chi flashed and in an instant, it pressed against his throat. Zhuge Wuqing's sharp eyes were staring at him. Teng Wuxian understood that if his interlocutor wished, that sword chi could slit his throat immediately and take his life. His life was in Zhuge Wuqing's hands. "Why?" asked Teng Wuxian while looking at Zhuge Wuqing. He was completely lost, he didn't understand anything. Even though he was terrified, he still wanted to know why those cultivators of the Xian Qi layer died. "Why?" "My sect, The Wanshou sect has never offended, Your Excellency. Why be so cruel this time? Zhuge Wuqing looked at him in a cold and detached way, however, there were still some lights of compassion and pity in his eyes. How pitiful this situation was. I will spare your life. Get lost, go back and tell Ting Wu Yao that some people cannot be threatened, said Zhuge Wuqing in a cold and detached way which stupefied Ting Wushan. Some people couldn't be threatened. Who was the powerful person that they had threatened? The only one they had provoked recently was Lin Feng. But how could Zhuge Wuqing be talking about Lin Feng? It was impossible. Ting Wushan couldn't believe that was possibly the reason. I don't understand, said Ting Wushan. Zhuge Wuqing found him to look even more clueless and pitiful. The Wanshou sect was really foolish. Go back, Ting Wu Yao should think about it carefully. There is someone that the Yu clan would like to kill but doesn't dare to act. Could it be that Ting Wu Yao thinks that the Wanshou sect had grown stronger than the Yu clan? When he finished talking, he absorbed his sword energy which was pressed against Ting Wushan's throat. It left a chilling sensation. It scared him so much that he could feel the cold sweat. Zhuge Wuqing turned his head and shot into the sky like a sword. Ting Wushan rubbed his throat where the sword qi was pressed against him. There was still a trace of blood. A moment before, if Zhuge Wuqing had wished, he could have cut off his head. The Yu clan wants to kill him, but doesn't dare to act, whispered Ting Wushan. His mouth twitched. Indeed, he immediately understood that they had neglected and overlooked an extremely important detail. Lin Feng had killed Yu Tianxing and Yu Qiu had also died because of him. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Yu clan hated Lin Feng more than the Wanshou sect, but had the Yu clan dealt with Lin Feng? They hadn't. The Yu clan hadn't dealt with Lin Feng. Even the last time in the mountain chain, the Yu clan was there as well. They had announced that they wanted to kill Lin Feng, but in the end, they didn't act on it. Not a single one of them had come forward to kill Lin Feng. The Wanshou sect had been the only group who blindly ignored all those events and openly fought against Lin Feng. The Yu clan hadn't intervened at all. They kept their hands clean of the situation. At that moment, Ting Wushan was recalling Zhuge Wuqing's words and cold sweat had covered his body. A chill was running down his spine. The Yu clan hated Lin Feng so much but they didn't dare to attack him. There must be a reason behind it. How ridiculous were they? They had thought that Lin Feng was just a little insignificant ant, without any influence, that they could crush. What a joke. Because of that, the Wanshou sect had lost more than half of its strongest cultivators. Its strength had been reduced to less than a third of what it used to be. How ridiculous. It sounded like an unbelievable joke that no one would believe. Ting Wushan had a grief-stricken smile on his face, then his silhouette disappeared into the sky like a rainbow. Ting Wushan was ridiculing his own foolish behavior. In the near future, the Wanshou sect would become the laughingstock of Shuiyu. Lin Feng was still in the Celestial Academy. He obviously didn't know that the members of the Wanshou sect had been slaughtered by Zhuge Wuqing. At that moment, he was sitting on a stone chair. In front of him, there was a chessboard. The petals of the peach trees in blossom were floating in the air around him. It was incredibly beautiful. In front of Lin Feng was Yan Yupingsheng. Lin Feng, your strategy is filled with sharp and aggressive methods, said Yan Yupingsheng when he saw Lin Feng's moves. In a flash, Lin Feng had several directions from which to attack. It seemed like he was about to corner Yan Yupingsheng's pieces. Lin Feng's playing style was extremely aggressive. But if your opponent is stronger than you, being aggressive is of no help. Yan Yupingsheng moved one piece and the game was drastically changed in the blink of an eye. Lin Feng seemed like he wanted to overwhelm Yan Yupingsheng's pieces. His style was extremely aggressive. However, Yan Yupingsheng's style was that of a mountain, absolutely calm and unmoving. Lin Feng was unable to take any of Yan Yupingsheng's pieces. Lin Feng was also lost. Every move he thought about making would lose the game. Lin Feng looked perplexed. He was silently observing the chessboard. His style was aggressive, but if the opponent's defense was too strong, how could he break through? "Please guide me, teacher," said Lin Feng after being stuck in thought for a long period of time. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't going to lie, he was beaten. "Move first," said Yan Yuping Sheng, which made Lin Feng pull a long face. He then slowly moved a piece. It was a defensive move. If the opponent was too strong and he felt threatened, he would defend and wait for his next opportunity to strike. When Yan Yuping Sheng saw Lin Feng's move, he smiled. Immediately after, he made his next move. Lin Feng's pieces were in bad positions and he could lose at any moment. Lin Feng didn't like seeing such a game, but that was the sad reality. "Once you've shot the arrow, there's no getting it back, do you understand?" said Yan Yuping Sheng firmly. Lin Feng remained silent. He had already chosen his strategy, he couldn't turn back time. At that moment, Lin Feng had the feeling that he both understood and didn't understand at the same time. "Teacher, I'm stupid, please elaborate," said Lin Feng after remaining silent for a while. He needed more explanation as he couldn't figure it out himself. The position in which you have put yourself in is weak, you can be counter-attacked from everywhere. A moment ago, you acted in such an aggressive way, but you were like an ant trying to shake a tree, because you were unsuccessful and have left so many holes to exploit, you are forced into the defensive and you are now hoping there will be another opportunity to strike a blow and come out victorious. However, in reality, the great spheres of influence will not allow you to have a second chance striking a blow, they will seize whichever opportunity they can to crush you in a single instant," said Yan Yuping Sheng slowly. Immediately after, he started grabbing Lin Feng's pieces and rearranging them on the chessboard. He put them in a position so that not even a drop of water could trickle through his defense. Even though no defense was perfect, there was always danger. Lin Feng was at least less vulnerable. Besides, it also seemed like Lin Feng's attacking position was much weaker, it did not seem threatening anymore. "Lin Feng, you have two paths in front of you, the first is to retreat voluntarily, even if it means disappearing. No matter how strong the opponent is, they cannot do anything if they cannot confront you, thus you can benefit from that time to become stronger, and once you're strong enough, you can attack again." Lin Feng was calmly listening to Yan Yuping Sheng and understood its meaning. The first path was leaving, disappearing from the imperial city, avoiding the danger. That way, no matter how strong his enemies were, they wouldn't be able to pursue Lin Feng. After becoming stronger, he could return to the imperial city. But if he chose that path, he would have to sacrifice a few pieces. After all, he wouldn't be able to disappear and bring the entirety of Yangzhou city along with him. "Teacher, what is the second path?" asked Lin Feng. "The second path is slaughter," said Yan Yuping Sheng. Even though he was usually so calm, at that moment he was releasing an extremely ruthless and sharp qi. Slaughtering all of your enemies is extremely difficult when you are weaker. You must always press forward with an indomitable will. You must evolve and grow stronger amongst a bloodbath. You cannot stop killing until your enemies are all dead. Of course, in order to slaughter your way through your enemies like a force of nature, you must always improve yourself, become stronger and stronger until the day when you have surpassed everybody else. However, that path is extremely dangerous and leaves you extremely vulnerable. Extremely sharp lights were twinkling in Lin Feng's eyes. "Teacher, the first path is for cowards. I can escape, but if I run away, how will I be able to maintain my indomitable will? Therefore, I will choose the second path, the path of bloodshed, the path of a killer. I will slaughter a path from the depths of hell all the way into the heavens." The path of bloodshed, slaughtering a path into the heavens. The path of bloodshed, slaughtering a path into the heavens. At that moment, Lin Feng was releasing a powerful and murderous aura. It was piercing through the air and rustling through the peach trees whose leaves fluttered, as if they were flinching away. Yan Yuping Sheng was looking at Lin Feng and smiling. On the continent, many people had become killers, but few of them had become murderous demons. Someone who walked the path of bloodshed would have a monstrous cultivation. There was a legend that said in ancient times, there was an evil deity, he was a true murderous demon, he had slaughtered so many people that entire country became a bloodbath. In the end, nobody knew where he was now. It was said that he broke through to the Tian Qi layer. But those were only rumors and Yan Yupingxing didn't know more than that. After all, he hadn't broken through to the Tian Qi layer yet. Besides, Lin Feng had already started walking on the path of bloodshed. If people wanted to kill him, he would kill them. Yan Yupingxing could also feel the murderous aura surrounding Lin Feng. Therefore, he decided to explain these things to Lin Feng. Since Lin Feng couldn't undo his actions and he wouldn't run away, he decided to tell him about the path of bloodshed. Lin Feng, I will play a tune for you, said Yan Yupingxing. Lin Feng then nodded and replied, okay. Yan Yupingxing stretched his hand and stroked the table. Immediately after, both the table and the chessboard between them disappeared. Then, he grabbed his zither which was on his back and placed it between them. Lin Feng was still sitting opposite Yan Yupingxing, he remained motionless. He only saw Yan Yupingxing's fingers which started to float across the strings of the zither. The first sound spread in the atmosphere and a sharp light appeared which made Lin Feng shiver. The first note contained deadly energy. Then Yan Yupingxing's fingers started to dance above the strings of the zither. The deadly energy was becoming more and more powerful. Lin Feng was welcoming that energy, unceasingly absorbing it. At the same time, around his body, a sharp qi emerged and seemed to move with the melody of the zither. Yan Yupingxing didn't raise his head, he was focused on playing the zither. The deadly energy had invaded the entire atmosphere and didn't stop emerging from the zither. It was so quick, Yan Yupingxing's fingers were moving with extreme speed across the strings, besides he was still accelerating, and the deadly energy was becoming stronger and stronger, more and more aggressive. Very quickly, Lin Feng's heart was filled with the sensation of murder and destruction, there was nothing else left in his heart except for complete annihilation. The heartless and emotionless deadly energy turned into a white qi which enveloped Lin Feng's body, just like a cocoon, it was dazzling. If other people had been there, they would have noticed that the murderous aura surrounding Lin Feng had been replaced with deadly energy. Lin Feng had already been enveloped by that deadly energy. The threads of deadly energy were becoming more and more numerous and they were unceasingly penetrating into Lin Feng's body. Besides, the trees of the peach orchard also looked like they were affected, a multitude of holes were appearing on the leaves of each and every single one of them. Even the petals of the peach trees in blossom looked like they were dying, as if their life was being sucked from them. Everything seemed to be fading, there was only a deadly energy which emanated the aura of death. In the middle of that deadly energy, Lin Feng first tried to resist but then it became too powerful. Lin Feng had already stopped resisting, he closed his eyes and his entire body was drowned into the murderous power contained within that energy. Yan Yupingxing raised his head and smiled even more while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng had entered into a trance-like state. Lin Feng was learning much quicker than Yan Yupingxing had expected. No wonder that he had already reached his current cultivation despite being so young. He also had an incredible battle ability. Lin Feng had an extraordinary power of understanding which transcended the realm of understanding. However, Yan Yupingxing didn't stop at all. In his life, he had met many geniuses. He had only chosen 3 students to teach his knowledge of cultivation and music but he couldn't help to favor Lin Feng the most. He appreciated Lin Feng's temperament the most. Lin Feng was grateful to those who helped him and was naturally kind-hearted, but he would also slaughter anyone who tried to cause him harm. All of Yan Yupingxing's students had high natural abilities but their way of thinking and the way they handled things were different. Even though one of his other students had high natural abilities and was kind-hearted, but also a ruthless killer, he still lacked determination, there was something missing. Then, there was Duan Xianyi, she was good, honest, and kind-hearted but she was a woman born into the imperial clan, she was too weak. She could play the zither very well but she wasn't taught how to cultivate. Then, There was his third student, Lin Feng. He had noticed him from the first day they met at the academy. He immediately had a positive impression. In his heart, he immediately knew that he would take him as a student, otherwise, he wouldn't have made such great efforts to guide him. Besides, each time Lin Feng saw him, he shouted, "Teacher," which made him feel very gratified. The murderous energy had enveloped the earth and the sky. Yan Yuping Sheng was still playing the zither, without stopping. Lin Feng's eyes were tightly closed, deadly energy was still penetrating into his body. He was using his heart to listen and his soul to understand. The tune is named Cosmic Annihilation. As long as I play, the deadly energy will continue to increase. I am interested to see how long you can study it. Sighed Yan Yuping Sheng. He slowly closed his eyes and continued to play the zither. That song, Cosmic Annihilation, had no end, it could go on forever. The zither continued to release deadly energy which was gaining in strength and intensity. Both of them had their eyes closed, they had long ago lost all notion of time. One of them was playing, the other was listening, and in the surrounding atmosphere, there was only deadly energy. Outside of the peach orchard, in the distance, some members of the Celestial Academy raised their heads and looked at the atmosphere above the peach orchard. They were extremely surprised. What a monstrous energy! Thought many people while shivering. A powerful and deadly energy had surprisingly risen there in the sky, it was dashing to the skies. It looked like the deadly energy was filling the atmosphere as it emitted whistling sounds as it expanded across the sky. It was even destroying the air which blocked its path. What's going on over there? People who were sensing that energy were more and more numerous. They were astonished. That energy was terrifying, it was even attempting to destroy the atmosphere itself. At that moment, a silhouette appeared, that person was moving through the sky. That person then threw a rock into the white light of the energy. The crowd suddenly saw a rock fall into the energy, in a flash, it was disintegrated into powder and was destroyed. As before, only the deadly energy was left. That windstorm of deadly energy had appeared above a manor of the Celestial Academy, it had transformed into a storm. It looked amazing. Everybody was astonished. An incredible number of people started walking towards the peach orchard, they wanted to see what was going on. However, at that moment, a silhouette appeared in the sky, and when they saw the storm of deadly energy, they frowned. "It's the vice principal is here," said the people when they saw that silhouette in the sky. They wanted to know what was going on. Longding glanced at the crowd and said, "The principal is cultivating, he's the one releasing that deadly energy. There is nothing strange, get back to what you were doing please. The principal is cultivating." No wonder, many people nodded as if it was natural. After what had happened before, they all knew who the principal was, Yan Yuping Sheng. He had been able to make the strong cultivators of the Wanshou sect run away with only a single sentence. He was able to kill Xian-level beasts in an instant, while remaining sat on a cushion in the sky. The principal can release such a monstrous energy while cultivating, it's astonishing. If I tried to go into it, I would probably be disintegrated into powder and die. Thought many people, they were scared by that energy, they were even more scared of Yan Yuping Sheng. In the middle of the peach orchard, the two figures still had their eyes closed, they had been there all day. Yan Yuping Sheng looked deathly pale, he had consumed a great deal of his energy. Playing the zither didn't require him to use his pure qi, but it required a great deal of mental strength. He had lost a great deal of his vitality. An ordinary person couldn't play the Cosmic Annihilation for more than a short moment. Yan Yuping Sheng was extremely strong, but he had never played the Cosmic Annihilation for so long, he had no more strength remaining. Nonetheless, he continued playing. Since Lin Feng was still in his trance, how could Yan Yuping Sheng stop? Even though stopping wouldn't wake Lin Feng from his trance, it would cause Lin Feng's insights to be of much lower quality. The best thing was for him to continue playing, so that Lin Feng's understanding of deadly energy would grow even stronger. The crowd surrounding the peach orchard had started moving back. The storm of deadly energy hadn't stopped, it was even becoming denser and covering a larger area. Nobody dared approach the region surrounding the peach orchard any longer. The crowd surrounding the peach orchard had started moving back. The storm of deadly energy hadn't stopped, it was even becoming denser and covering a larger area. Nobody dared approach the region surrounding the peach orchard any longer. In the distance, the crowd of the Celestial Academy were still watching patiently. They were fixedly staring at that deadly energy moving through the air. It was terrifying. Their principal, Yan Yuping Sheng, seemed to be cultivating a powerful skill, but what kind of skill exactly? That terrifying deadly energy seemed like it wanted to annihilate everything. How could the crowd know that inside the energy their principal's face had already turned deathly pale? He was as pale as a sheet of paper. Yan Yuping Sheng was extremely strong, but at that moment, he looked like he was going to collapse from exhaustion. Lin Feng had been sitting in meditation for 2 days already, and hadn't emerged from his trance a single time. His eyes were tightly closed and the deadly energy surrounding his body was becoming denser with each passing moment. It was terrifying. Lin Feng, if you don't emerge out of your meditation trance soon, I really fear that I will die of exhaustion, thought Yan Yuping Sheng with a painful smile on his face. Even though he was thinking that way, his fingers were still unceasingly dancing over the strings of his zither. The sky was gradually becoming darker and darker, but the storm of white deadly energy was still illuminating the atmosphere. It was strangely beautiful. Even though their principal was still practicing without rest, many of the students had already grown tired of waiting and went back to their living quarters to rest. In the middle of the peach orchard, the qi around Yan Yuping Sheng's body was becoming restless and the smile of agony had grown so large that it transformed his face. Ka! Xing! 2 consecutive sounds emerged in the darkness. Black blood suddenly burst out of Yan Yuping Sheng's mouth. He had spared no effort, but he had finally reached his limit. Blood was dripping from his fingers. On top of that, from the zither strings that had been dyed red, one of them broke. He finally stopped playing the cosmic annihilation. However, the deadly energy that had gathered in the atmosphere was still as powerful as before. It was even scary for him to behold. His heartbeat finally started to decrease. Yan Yuping Sheng looked at Lin Feng, whose eyes were still closed, and shook his head. That monster! He still hadn't woken up. When would he emerge from his trance? At that moment, Lin Feng had banished all distracting thoughts from his mind. He had forgotten about all 10,000 things of creation. In his mind, there was only a black sword floating in the nothingness. That sword had appeared again, but this time, while looking at it, Lin Feng had gained a deeper understanding of it. The sword was created solely from deadly energy. Lin Feng had never really understood the warlord's sword, but each time he tried, he would only gain a small insight into the sword. At that moment, it seemed like that black sword was in harmony with the deadly energy in Lin Feng's heart. It was filled with endless murderous intent. Srrr. Srrr. Lin Feng opened his eyes. A sword started to form in front of his eyes. It was being filled with an endless quantity of deadly energy. Boom! Yan Yuping Sheng's body was violently blown back and the stone chair on which he was sitting exploded into dust. He quickly retreated to a safe distance. In his eyes, a sharp light was twinkling. That deadly energy was monstrously strong. Lin Feng's determination to kill created an incredible pressure which formed into deadly energy. In darkness of the night, such a thing was extremely scary. Yan Yuping Sheng raised his head and saw Lin Feng's body rise into the air. It seemed like the deadly energy couldn't harm him at all. What surprised Yan Yuping Sheng even more was that in front of Lin Feng, a sword was still condensing. Suddenly, a pure qi sword appeared, but it was black. A black sword. Yan Yuping Sheng was fixedly staring at that sword. It was filled with monstrously strong deadly energy and murderous intent. A strong wind started whistling in the air. Yan Yuping Sheng was astonished. He only saw that the deadly energy in the atmosphere started rushing into that black sword was absorbing the deadly energy. What? What's that? Yan Yupingsheng didn't understand. How was that possible? How could that black sword suddenly absorb all of that deadly energy to increase its own strength? Lin Feng's eyes were pitch black and looked ice cold, but they were filled with murder. That was the sword from his celestial book, just like the grim fire. The sword that he formed before with his limited understanding had never reached such an incredible level. The black sword slowly started moving and rose into the air above Lin Feng. It seemed like it even wanted to destroy the darkness covering the sky. The people who hadn't left in the surrounding region were astonished. They could all feel that there was a terrifying sword filled with deadly energy that wanted to destroy everything, including them. People raised their heads and saw that above the manor, a sword light was becoming more and more intense. It seemed like there was a sword but they couldn't quite see it. It was too dark and the sword itself was black, which caused it to blend with the darkness. The crowd could only see a blurry silhouette, but that silhouette didn't look like Yan Yupingsheng, it looked like a young man. It was Lin Feng. What? Why would Lin Feng be there? I must be seeing things, thought the people who could see clearly, while shaking their heads. They immediately refused to believe their eyes. Even though Lin Feng had high natural abilities and was incredibly powerful, he did not have the power to create such an incredible amount of deadly energy to form a sword. The level of that sword was just too scary. The people in the crowd weren't the only ones who couldn't believe it. Yan Yupingsheng also couldn't believe his eyes. That sword already had a will of its own. Its will was. Yan Yupingsheng didn't dare to even think about it. It seemed Lin Feng had stepped into the next cultivation dimension. Yan Yupingsheng had always wanted to break through to the next cultivation dimension. He knew that in order to reach the realm of an authentically powerful cultivator, he had to penetrate into that dimension. It was his ultimate goal on his path of cultivation. Lin Feng, come down, shouted Yan Yupingsheng coldly when he saw the deadly energy started to slow down and started to become restless. Lin Feng's body shook and he came back to consciousness. What was going on? What was happening? His entire body was surrounded by deadly energy as he floated in the sky. He didn't know how he got there. If Yan Yupingsheng hadn't called him, it was very likely that Lin Feng would lose control of the sword and it would attack him. His body shook, the black sword disappeared and the deadly energy immediately moved into his body. Immediately after, Lin Feng moved back to the ground. Teacher! Shouted Lin Feng when he saw that there was blood on Yan Yupingsheng's mouth and he looked deathly pale. Lin Feng was astonished. Teacher, what happened to you? Asked Lin Feng, surprised and anxious. It didn't look Yan Yupingsheng had been in a battle with anyone. Of course, almost nobody in Shuiyu could harm him anyway. Yan Yupingsheng smiled wryly. Nothing happened, said Yan Yupingsheng while slightly shaking his head. Teacher, who did this to you? Asked Lin Feng, who didn't believe Yan Yupingsheng. Yan Yupingsheng was extremely strong, who could hurt him? He was also deathly pale, which made it look like he had been badly injured. Besides, Yan Yupingsheng's qi was so weak, it was dangerous. With Yan Yupingsheng's monstrous strength, who could have done such a thing to him? Yan Yupingsheng looked dumbfounded at Lin Feng and started to shake his head in silence. Lin Feng was surprised and suddenly came to an understanding. Teacher, was it me? Asked Lin Feng while timidly staring at Yan Yupingsheng. They had been practicing together for a few days. Apart from him, it couldn't be anyone else. Yan Yupingsheng, when he saw that Lin Feng wouldn't feel at ease until knowing the truth, slightly nodded. Lin Feng, your power of understanding is monstrous. In just 2 days, I used all of my strength and couldn't continue playing the cosmic annihilation. If I had the power to continue, it's very possible that you would have gained even more enlightenment, said Yan Yupingsheng while feeling guilty. Lin Feng's power of understanding was incredible, it was extremely rare, therefore, he wanted to play until the end so that Lin Feng could receive the most gains. When Lin Feng heard Yan Yuping Sheng, he felt remorseful and uneasy, but he also felt deeply grateful. He then took a deep breath. Yan Yuping Sheng was injured because of him. Lin Feng and Yan Yuping Sheng were neither kith nor kin, but Yan Yuping Sheng had given everything that he had to help Lin Feng. He continued to play for Lin Feng until he was injured in the hope that it would benefit Lin Feng's cultivation. Yan Yuping Sheng was extremely good to him and Lin Feng would always remember that. "Thank you, teacher," said Lin Feng to Yan Yuping Sheng while slightly bowing, just like a devoted student in front of his teacher. It was also a way for Lin Feng to express his utmost gratitude. Even though the world was cruel, there were still many kind-hearted and virtuous people who lived in seclusion. Otherwise, it would have been a terrible world to live in. Lin Feng appreciated those good-natured people. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu was built 2 years ago and hadn't yet managed to attract the masses of geniuses the way it had anticipated. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu was built 2 years ago and hadn't yet managed to attract the masses of geniuses the way it had anticipated. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu was built in the hopes to entice the entire country of Shuiyu. It was built for the purpose of becoming one of the most influential powers of influence in Shuiyu. Even though it had seized some of the most outstanding disciples from the larger sects, the number of them who were able to become famous in the imperial city could be counted on one hand. Besides, the holy courtyard of Shuiyu was continuously humiliated by Lin Feng, whom they hadn't been able to kill when they destroyed the Yunhai sect. That tiny little disciple of the Yunhai sect had greatly impacted their reputation, especially in the imperial city. Astonishing news about Lin Feng's great accomplishments continued to spread through the city. At the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, nobody had been able to create such a buzz in the imperial city. Of course, the holy courtyard of Shuiyu wasn't the only group who were overshadowed. No matter who you asked, if one person had to be chosen as the most astonishing person in the entire country, the only name you would hear would be Lin Feng. He had set an entire city on fire to kill the army from Mou and crush their invasion. He crossed into the enemy country to rescue the princess, he encircled the imperial city and rescued Lu Zhanglan from receiving the death penalty for false crimes. He also killed Duan Tianlang's son, Duan Han, as Duan Tianlang watched on. Then, he killed countless powerful members of the Wanshou sect in the Nine Dragon Mountain chain and at the Celestial Academy. Each and every single one of his battles were breathtaking. There were also many things which the people didn't know about. For example, in Celestial River, he had defeated the Blade Master Leng Yu and killed Bing Yuan. He easily dealt with a number of strong opponents in Celestial River, but nobody knew about those things in the Imperial City. In 2 years, Lin Feng had created a storm wherever he went, nobody could compare to him. In the Imperial City, everybody knew his name. Lin Feng was only 18 years old and was one of the most famous names in the entire country. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu, like the Celestial Academy, created its own cultivation towers. They even created them on a larger scale to be grander and more magnificent than those of the academy. At that moment, at the foot of one of the cultivation towers, was Lin Qian. She was wearing a bright red dress and looked very thin. She raised her head and looked to the top floor of the cultivation tower. She looked extremely sad and desolate. 2 years had passed since she joined the academy. She could vaguely remember what happened 2 years ago when Chu Zhanpeng went to the Yunhai sect. Back then, she used to be high-spirited and vigorous, she had an ice and fire spirit and Chu Zhanpeng had fallen for her. She used to think about how wonderful her future was going to be. But at that moment, her dreams didn't become a reality. It seemed like her destiny and Lin Feng's destiny were both flipped upside down. Lin Feng had suddenly started rising to prominence and accomplishing many great things. He had been, step by step, walking down the path of a legendary cultivator. When he revealed himself at the annual meeting of the Lin clan in Yangzhou City, he had already displayed his magnificence and at the same time, Lin Qian had lost her splendor. Then, a year ago, Lin Feng obtained his own army and gained Yangzhou City as a fief. Lin Feng and his troops had magnificently stormed into Yangzhou City and swept away all obstacles that stood in his way. Lin Feng was high-spirited, vigorous and dynamic. He quickly became the head of the local government in Yangzhou City and had obtained the name of Qi Xie Marquis. However, Lin Qian was only able to watch her family be oppressed by him. They didn't even have the power to contest Lin Feng's oppression. Lin Qian's only hope was lying on Chu Zhanpeng's shoulders. Without him, she would never be able to compete with Lin Feng. The young man whom she used to look down upon in the past, now held her in no regard. Also, the news that Lin Feng had defeated 12 Xianqi layer cultivators of the Wanshou sect by himself, was spreading. On top of that, amongst those 12 cultivators, there had been 3 cultivators of the 3rd Xianqi layer. Lin Feng had, once again, amazed the entire imperial city. After that, the Wanshou sect sent a group of their most powerful cultivators to take their revenge, but they were forced to retreat from the academy. When that powerful group finally returned to the Wanshou sect, only the vice-patriarch was left alive. Surprisingly, from that moment on, the Wanshou sect no longer dared to oppose Lin Feng, as if they had forgotten their hatred completely. Lin Feng had killed 12 cultivators of the Xianqi layer, including 3 of the 3rd Xianqi layer. That news had left Lin Qian dumbstruck because she knew that in the past, Chu Zhanpeng was only at the 3rd Xianqi layer. Lin Feng had been able to kill 3 cultivators at the 3rd Xianqi layer, therefore, was Chu Zhanpeng even capable of killing Lin Feng? Lin Qian was convinced that she would never get her revenge. She hated Lin Feng. Therefore she had come to the cultivation tower to wait and started to daydream. At the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, many people were looking at Lin Qian. Some people were looking at her with admiring eyes, while some other young girls were also looking at her with envy, because she was with Chu Zhanpeng. Some people also believed that if Lin Qian was waiting there, it was because she was waiting for him. A surge of power shot into the sky. It was an extremely strong qi that was streaking across the sky. On the ground, some of the people who were walking suddenly stopped in their tracks. They raised their heads, looked at the sky and suddenly looked astonished. They only saw a silhouette shooting across the sky like a meteor. There were 2 gigantic wings that could be seen. It was a legendary rock spirit. As it cried out, its cry echoed in the air into the horizon. It's Chu Zhanpeng. Some people were shivering. That silhouette that shot into the sky suddenly stopped and floated in the sky. It slowly flapped its wings. There was a confident smile on that strangely bestial face. His cultivation had finally broken through to the next level. Chu Zhanpeng had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. Qian. Chu Zhanpeng looked at Lin Qian, who was waiting at the foot of the tower. He flapped his wings and suddenly crossed a distance of 1,000 meters in an instant. He grabbed Lin Qian and then once again shot into the sky. How fast! Chu Zhanpeng must have had a breakthrough. The crowd was astonished. He had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. He really was a genius. During the competition of geniuses, he will definitely illuminate the country with his power and bring prestige to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. As if Chu Zhanpeng had felt the people's admiration, his smile grew more proud. Last time, at the Celestial Academy, he didn't have the opportunity to kill Lin Feng, but this time, no one could stop him. Qian, I broke through to the 4th Xianqi layer. I can easily deal with Lin Feng now. Just wait for the good news, said Chu Zhanpeng while smiling indifferently. Lin Qian slightly nodded. Considering that Chu Zhanpeng had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer, killing Lin Feng would certainly go smoothly. It was great news that he increased his cultivation. This time, all the members of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu were gasping in amazement while looking at Chu Zhanpeng. His natural abilities and cultivation speed were astonishing. Nobody there cared about what had happened at the Celestial Academy. Chu Zhanpeng had broken through to the fourth Xian-Qi layer before everyone's eyes and created a monumental display, so the members of the holy courtyard worshipped him even more, whereas Lin Feng had accomplished a great number of remarkable things in secret and there were many people who had no idea of his true ability. At the same time, in a beautiful place of the imperial city, by a waterfall, there was a young man holding a sword. At that moment, the wind was blowing on that young man's body. He suddenly opened his eyes and his sword diffused an ice-cold light. At the same time, he moved and shot into the air like an arrow. As he shot into the sky, he pierced the atmosphere with his sword. The sword was extremely bright, it was so blinding that only its light could be seen in the sky as it thrust forward. After that, a subtle sound spread through the air as a small hole suddenly appeared in the waterfall. The young man smiled, his silhouette flickered and he moved back down onto the ground. His clothes were fluttering indifferently in the wind. Sir! A cracking sound spread in the air. The water from the waterfall suddenly burst into a shower of rain. The water then rushed towards that young man, however, at the moment when it was about to collide with him, an intangible qi blocked it, the water couldn't penetrate that qi. Your sword skills are becoming more and more terrific, sighed a feminine voice which made the young man feel extremely proud. He then turned around and looked at the beautiful woman. We will be gathering soon, this time, Ling Tian, will reveal myself to the world of cultivation for the first time, increasing my cultivation is necessary. I will become stronger until I dominate the heavens. The young man sounded insufferably arrogant and proud. He was determined to rule the heavens. At the same time, in the Haoyu sect and the Ice and Snow Mountain village, people were riding ferocious beasts at great speed and heading for the imperial city. Besides, the patriarch of the Haoyu sect himself was walking in front of a group. There were also people walking by his sides. Apart from a few elders of the sect, there were also the most outstanding core disciples of the sect with them. It was clear to them that this time, the competition would be extraordinary and would also have extraordinary implications. No matter if it was for those in charge of the sect or its disciples, it was a great opportunity for everybody. It was an opportunity which they couldn't miss. In order to become one of the most outstanding geniuses of Shueyu, they couldn't spare any effort when it came to their cultivation. Everybody knew that so many people had started practicing even harder. Apart from the sects, in Shueyu, many people belonging to other spheres of influence, as well as independent young people, were making their way towards the imperial city. The geniuses of Shueyu had to strive for victory if they wanted to join the great competition of Shueyu. It was the era of the geniuses. Lin Feng had no idea what was happening outside. All he knew was that he had to become stronger, that was the only way to earn true freedom in the world. Only a few days had passed since those members of the Wanshou sect had left. Lin Feng had also heard that Ting Wushan and his group were attacked on the way back and that only Ting Wushan survived. Lin Feng didn't know who it was who attacked them, but he was very curious. All those people who were following Ting Wushan were killed. Besides, after that, the Wanshou sect hadn't made any other moves against Lin Feng. Why was that? All the events seemed to be related to each other, but no matter how hard Lin Feng tried to think, it was impossible for him to guess the hidden connection, therefore it was useless for him to drive himself crazy trying to find out the truth. Lin Feng was no longer living in the student palaces of the academy, instead, he was living in his own gigantic manor at the academy, given by the principal Yan Yuping Sheng. Nobody in the academy had any objections. With Lin Feng's incredible natural abilities, nobody could rival him in the academy. In terms of strength, only a few teachers were able to compete with him. With all the merits which Lin Feng had accomplished, having his own personal manor was justified. In the gigantic manor, there was also a courtyard, a field to practice cultivation in a pavilion surrounded by beautiful rockery scenery. It was magnificent. There were also plenty of rooms to live in, a cultivation room, and some rooms for him to concoct pills and fabricate weapons. Everything was pristine and ready to use. At that moment, Lin Feng was in the alchemy room. Apart from Lin Feng, there was also Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua. The three of them stood around a cauldron. That cauldron was gigantic and majestic, but it looked very simple. It seemed like it hadn't been used for centuries and it was releasing a very ancient qi. That cauldron was the one that Lin Feng had obtained in Celestial River. It was the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron. Of course, Lin Feng knew that that cauldron was still missing parts, however he could still use it to concoct pills. A fire was burning under the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron and the heat had enveloped the entire cauldron. Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua were not participating at all, they were only observing Lin Feng's actions. Back in Yangzhou City, they had taught Lin Feng about alchemy and Lin Feng was an extremely quick learner. At that moment, except for a few minor adjustments, Lin Feng no longer needed their help with concocting pills. Lin Feng had a method for concocting pills by relying on his extremely strong soul. He had reached a particularly high level in alchemy. The Heavenly Dragon Cauldron started diffusing a pleasant scent, the medicinal fragrance was rich and thick in the air. It seemed like the pills were nearing completion. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi glanced at each other, they were surprised. Lin Feng was able to concoct pills by himself in such a short period of time. At that moment, Lin Feng was concocting Xian-level pills of lower quality. The pills he was concocting were extremely complicated and had the special attribute of allowing cultivators to break through a bottleneck with greater ease. Ren Qingquang and the two other high-ranking soldiers had also used that pill to break through to the Xian Qi layer. Many cultivators who were at the peak of the 9th Ling Qi layer would crave for this pill even in their wildest dreams. Its price was so high that it even exceeded that of some higher-level pills. Lin Feng was concocting those pills for Duan Feng and Lan Jiao. They were both close to breaking through to the Xian Qi layer. If they consumed that pill, Lin Feng was hoping that they would break through. Then, Lin Feng would then have two more cultivators of the Xian Qi layer on his side and at the very least they would be able to protect themselves. His terrifying soul enveloped the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron, small parts of his soul were penetrating into the interior of the cauldron. Lin Feng was able to clearly sense every single inch of the cauldron which enabled him to perfectly control the degree of heating. 9 flames! Shouted Lin Feng suddenly. The fire beneath the cauldron dispersed. 9 small fire lotuses appeared and shot towards very specific parts of the cauldron. Those 9 lotus flowers engulfed the cauldron. There was a sudden increase in pressure inside the cauldron and at the same time, the mixture in the cauldron also started to move in 9 different directions before consolidating into a pill. These pills were Xian-level pills, their energy had reached a climax. Besides, the number 9 was symbolic because it was the imperial number, the number of the king. Therefore, in the continent, many treasures and skills put significance in the number 9, for example the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron, the latter could thus be called the Cauldron of the Dragon King. While concocting pills, one of the most important factors was to control the degree and duration of the heat of each specific ingredient to allow them to correctly merge. How amazing! Sighed Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi with amazement. Lin Feng could control the fire with his soul, even if they wanted to do the same, it wasn't that easy. Controlling the fire with one's soul required an extremely powerful soul and required a great deal of effort. However, Lin Feng looked calm, he did not look like he was doing something difficult and his expression was normal. Lin Feng was controlling the 9 flames and had formed each flame into a delicate lotus flower. This was extremely difficult to do this with even a single flame. I have no idea how he's doing that, the 2 old men were shaking their heads. Lin Feng was a monster. Not only did he have amazing and breathtaking natural abilities, but he could also concoct pills using such a magnificent method. And he was only 18 years old. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi didn't dare imagine how strong Lin Feng would be when he reached their age. Of course, they were convinced that Lin Feng would be leaving Xueyu sooner or later. Lin Feng couldn't be limited to Xueyu. Xueyu was only the start of his journey and not the final destination. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi started to calm down. They knew that concocting high-level pills wouldn't be a problem for Lin Feng in the future. Concocting Xian-level pills of lower quality already wasn't a problem for him, besides, the success rates were very high. Lin Feng had an extremely strong soul and a powerful flame which were essential factors for an alchemist. Lin Feng also had great teachers who were considered as top-level alchemists in Xueyu. Lin Feng also possessed the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron. This helped him to easily concoct the Xian-level pills. A strong and pleasant fragrance invaded the atmosphere and 3 pills floated from the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron. On the surface there was a shiny coat and one could see at first glance that the quality of those pills was extremely high. Lin Feng raised his head as he released his pure qi and in a flash, those 3 pills shot towards him and landed on the palm of his hand. When Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi saw those pills, they started to walk towards Lin Feng and study the blue and green pills. They then started to shake their heads in disbelief. That little monster can really concoct pills. Mr. Qi said. Concocting pills were extremely hard, they usually didn't do more than 1 pill at a time whereas Lin Feng had immediately concocted 3 pills at once. There was a great risk as if there was even a small problem with 1 pill, then all the ingredients were lost. These old men were usually very careful when concocting pills, they would concoct 1 pill with extreme care as to not make a mistake, but Lin Feng was able to concoct 3 at once. Old fellow, Lin Feng is already much better than us, said Mr. Hua in a very low voice. Mr. Qi nodded. Lin Feng's pills were clearly better quality than theirs. It's only because I used the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron, said Lin Feng, who felt embarrassed. Even if you used the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron, you concocted those pills by relying on your own ability, there is no doubt about that. Mr. Hua and I can see that clearly, replied Mr. Qi. Lin Feng didn't try to explain anything and said, Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, let's leave. When Lin Feng finished talking, he put the cauldron in his Na stone. Immediately after, the 3 of them left the alchemy room. The winged tiger suddenly rushed up to Lin Feng and roared in a pleading manner. Its gigantic eyes were fixed on Lin Feng. It looked like it was begging for something. You want to eat these pills? Asked Lin Feng while looking at the winged tiger strangely. Roar, replied the winged tiger while nodding its head, which left Lin Feng speechless. Raise your head, said Lin Feng. The winged tiger raised its head and looked at Lin Feng, the beast looked perplexed. Lin Feng smiled and took out a pill, he then stretched his arm and threw the pill above the winged tiger's head. The winged tiger was surprised, it immediately opened its mouth and caught the pill. The 2 old men by his side were speechless. What a waste of a pill! Lin Feng had just wasted such a great treasure. Lin Feng didn't care about that Xian-level pill, if the winged tiger wanted to have one, why not give one to him? Lin Feng didn't care about that Xian-level pill, if the winged tiger wanted to have one, why not give one to him? That Xian-Qi layer pill could only make a cultivator break through to the first Xian-Qi layer, nothing more, and the winged tiger could easily kill multiple cultivators of the first Xian-Qi layer. It could even kill cultivators of the second Xian-Qi layer. Who was more valuable to Lin Feng? A cultivator of the first Xian-Qi layer or his winged tiger companion? For Lin Feng, the answer was obvious. Since Lin Feng had adopted the winged tiger, it was considered as one of his friends. After the winged tiger swallowed the Xian-level pill, its eyes started twinkling in a resplendent way, it roared with pleasure. Immediately after, it started walking away with long strides, looking extremely satisfied. It also looked amused somehow. When Lin Feng saw how happy the winged tiger looked, he slightly shook his head and immediately left. He had to find Lan Jiao and Duan Feng. When Duan Feng saw that pill, he was stupefied, he looked at Lin Feng and shouted, Lin Feng, big brother. He had never even seen such a pill, it was too precious. Duan Feng, when you have the feeling that you can break through to the Xian Qi layer, just take that pill, it will help you through the bottleneck. Of course, if you don't feel like using it and prefer relying on your own ability, just keep that pill for the future, that is alright as well. Lin Feng slightly smiled while he spoke. If it had been someone else, Lin Feng wouldn't have added those last sentences, but Duan Feng had the blood spirit of the imperial clan. He also had extremely high natural abilities. He had a pure heart and devoted his life to cultivation, and it showed. In just 2 years, he had broken from the Qi layer through to the peak of the Ling Qi layer. He was only one step away from reaching the Xian Qi layer. Duan Feng is not weaker than the so-called high officials, it's just that nobody realizes his talent, that's all. Thought Lin Feng. Duan Feng did not have any arrogance, he was discreet and a very introverted character. Besides, he had never thought of himself as someone with a high level of talent. He only focused on improving his cultivation and ignored everything else. For those reasons, Duan Feng wasn't very well known in the Celestial Academy. Of course, because of his personality, he could practice cultivation in peace without any distractions. He could focus his entire attention on his cultivation. Perhaps Duan Feng, relying solely on his natural abilities and tenacity, would greatly surprise everybody one day. I will use it. I have the feeling that I can break through to the Xian Qi layer any time now, said Duan Feng after looking pensive for a short moment, which astonished Lin Feng. Duan Feng, are you sure? Lin Feng couldn't help but ask. When it came to profound pills, after having using a pill, the same pill would have a much lower effect in the future, except for a few healing pills and other pills with special attributes. Not only did he not need to use it, but it might also affect Duan Feng's confidence. Lin Feng, brother, there will be no problem, replied Duan Feng while nodding. Lin Feng didn't say anything at first, and then added, all right, well, when you start attempting to break through to the Xian Qi layer, I will protect you. All right, sorry for bothering you, brother, replied Duan Feng, who immediately sat down cross-legged, which rendered Lin Feng speechless. His movements seemed so natural and he clearly didn't think twice. It seemed like he trusted Lin Feng with his life. Duan Feng's cultivation was increasing very quickly. He laid some purity stones next to him and then swallowed the pill. He quickly started absorbing the qi of heaven and earth as he started his cultivation. Lin Feng on his side, calmly watched him practicing cultivation. Around Duan Feng's body was a sharp and dazzling golden light. He truly looked like he was a king among men. What kind of skill is he cultivating? Lin Feng realized that he hadn't paid enough attention to Duan Feng in the past. In order to break through to the first Xian Qi layer, a cultivator needed to cultivate a cultivation skill like his Cosmos Burning Sun, but Duan Feng had never mentioned anything, but he seemed to be very confident in breaking through to the Xian Qi layer. It looks like a very complex technique, thought Lin Feng. His cultivation method contained a brutal and yet elegant qi. That skill was extraordinary. The fact that Duan Feng's cultivation had increased so quickly definitely had something to do with the skills he practiced. Around Duan Feng's body, a storm was becoming visible. It was terrifying. Lin Feng was shocked and also started to sense the qi in the atmosphere. It's a D-level skill. Duan Feng surprisingly has such terrifying skills. Lin Feng was astonished and perplexed. The speed at which a person absorbed qi was a good indicator of how strong that person was. And Duan Feng was absorbing the qi around him at an incredible speed. Duan Feng's skill was incredible. It was at least a D-level skill of lower quality. Lin Feng's Cosmos Burning Sun skill was also a D-level skill of lower quality. How could Lin Feng not be astonished? But Lin Feng is sure that Duan Feng wasn't planning to hide anything from him, otherwise he wouldn't have used that skill in front of him at that moment. Besides, Duan Feng wasn't the scheming and calculating type of person. But where did his skill come from? All I can do is wait until he's done and then I will ask him, thought Lin Feng. He then continued watching Duan Feng absorb incredible quantities of qi from his surroundings. Very quickly, Duan Feng was surrounded by a terrifying storm of qi which was forming into a crystal around him. Duan Feng was in the middle of that crystal and Lin Feng couldn't even see Duan Feng's facial traits clearly anymore. He condensed the qi into a solid state and he's going to absorb and purify it into pure qi using a liquefaction process. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes, he had really underestimated both Duan Feng's skill and talent. In such a short time, he would be able to break through to the Xian qi layer. A terrifying qi started flowing through the air at the same pace as Duan Feng's heartbeat and it then dispersed. After a short moment of calm, multiple silhouettes started to appear, Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, Lan Jiao, Jing Yun and Yi Shui, they were all fixedly staring at Duan Feng inside his cocoon. Jing Yun's mouth was wide open. Astonishment had invaded her beautiful eyes. Duan Feng was going to break through to the Xian qi layer already? He was going to break through to the Xian qi layer. That was incredible. Since when was it so easy to break through to the Xian qi layer? It seems like that pill was wasted, thought Lin Feng. Even without a pill, Duan Feng would be able to break through to the Xian qi layer. It would have only been a matter of time. Of course, saying that it was a waste was also exaggerated, at least at that moment Lin Feng knew how extraordinary Duan Feng was. Immediately after, the qi formed a liquid and started to penetrate into Duan Feng's body and pure qi started to appear around him which pierced through his cocoon of qi. It was extremely sharp. He was going to break through, it was about to happen. Boom! A terrifying qi emerged from Duan Feng's body. Behind Duan Feng was a black door, that black door was part of his spirit, the sealed door's spirit. A creaking sound emerged through the atmosphere, sealed doors continued appearing and after the fifth one appeared, it stopped. Duan Feng surprisingly had 5 sealed doors, how terrifying. At the same time, a sharp pure qi burst towards the skies. Immediately after, Duan Feng opened his eyes. The qi around his body had been completely transformed into pure qi. Pure qi was now glowing around his entire body. After the sharp light disappeared, Duan Feng saw that there was a group of people who were all looking at him. He was stupefied. He then immediately looked at Lin Feng and smiled. Lin Feng, big brother, I have successfully broke through to the Xian qi layer. Duan Feng's voice sounded innocent and immature, he wanted to share his joy with Lin Feng. Lin Feng slightly nodded, his silhouette flickered and landed in front of Duan Feng. Alright, Duan Feng, you have terrifying natural abilities. What are you talking about? When Duan Feng heard Lin Feng's compliment, he lowered his head looking shy. Duan Feng, what is the skill that you cultivate? Where does it come from? Asked Lin Feng without wasting time. It's not that Lin Feng was trying to interrogate him but he was very curious of the origins of the skill. Since Duan Feng left the village, Lin Feng was and the others were almost always with him, they were always in a group. Where could he have obtained such a monstrous skill without them knowing? If Duan Feng wanted to keep it a secret, he wouldn't have used it in front of everyone, therefore Lin Feng didn't hesitate and straightforwardly asked him. When Duan Feng heard Lin Feng, he was shocked and immediately replied, if I tell you that it appeared in my memories, would you believe me? When Duan Feng heard Lin Feng, he was shocked and immediately replied, if I tell you that it appeared in my memories, would you believe me? Duan Feng was looking at Lin Feng hoping that he would believe him. That skill was seemingly in his memories, he had always had it inside him. Lin Feng stared at Duan Feng and said, while nodding, I do believe you. Lin Feng really did believe Duan Feng. Even though it was a very strange explanation, there were many strange things in the world already. Something like that happening in Duan Feng's memories didn't seem that strange to Lin Feng. Besides, Duan Feng had the blood of the imperial clan flowing in his veins, he had inherited their blood spirit and it was possible some of their memories. Maybe it was something normal for blood spirits. Lin Feng, brother, thank you, said Duan Feng when he saw that Lin Feng wholeheartedly believed him. His smile was warm and friendly. Why are you thanking me? Even if you came across some amazing skills but didn't tell me about it, I wouldn't be mad at you. I was just surprised, that's all, replied Lin Feng while shaking his head. All right, nodded Duan Feng. Immediately after, he looked at Jing Yun and said, Jing Yun, sister, now that I have broken through to the Xian-Qi layer, I can protect you. Silly boy, said Jing Yun. Duan Feng and Jing Yun's relationship was very close. They treated each other like blood-related siblings. Duan Feng scratched his head. He looked incredibly simple and honest. Lin Feng turned around and looked at Lan Jiao. Lan Jiao, Duan Feng just broke through to the Xian-Qi layer. What about you? When will you start to break through? Why do you care? Said Lan Jiao, which made Lin Feng lose face. He was speechless. I don't care, it's just having weaklings on my side is burdensome. Of course, if you are willing to leave, I would be more than happy to send you on your way. Lin Feng had said that on purpose and it left Lan Jiao astonished. She looked at him with a cruel glare and said, You want me to leave so that I stop being a burden? Even if you want me to leave, I refuse. I will always be a burden and stay with you. Whether you want to leave or not is your decision, but you are too weak. Next time you need help, don't expect anyone to come help you. I have a pill here which can help you break through to the Xian-Qi layer when the right time comes. Take it and use it when you think it's the right time, said Lin Feng. Lan Jiao wanted to refuse, but Lin Feng had already thrown a pill at her, which stupefied her. Lin Feng had just thrown a Xian-level pill towards her the same way he would have disposed of trash. She obviously knew how precious the pill was. She quickly stretched out her hand and caught the pill. She wanted to say something but Lin Feng had already turned around and left, not giving her the chance to say anything, which stupefied Lan Jiao. That guy. While looking at Lin Feng's back, her eyes were filled with anger, but she was also slightly touched. He had offered her a Xian-level pill while acting like a wealthy and spoilt noble. It was as if he didn't care about such treasures. How detestable. After Lin Feng made his exit, he went to a room which was very orderly and tidy. Meng Qing was sitting cross-legged on the bed inside the room. Her eyes were closed. She seemed like she was cultivating. There was a faintly discernible coldness around her body. When she heard Lin Feng enter, she opened her eyes and gave him a smile. Her smile could make anyone melt. When Lin Feng saw Meng Qing smile, he suddenly felt extremely relaxed. He didn't feel any pressure at all. Then he looked at Meng Qing with a warm and tender look. He walked towards her and immediately jumped onto the bed. He felt tired at that moment, so he just started lying next to Meng Qing, as if it was his own bed. He was acting wildly. Meng Qing's eyes lit up. She smiled and shook her head. That guy was starting to take more and more liberties. He used to shake with fear from head to toe when entering her room, but at that moment, without warning, he jumped onto her bed and lied down in a relaxed manner. Meng Qing didn't say anything either and allowed him to act wildly. In fact, considering her feelings for Lin Feng, she was able to tolerate his actions. She wanted to stay with him forever. Lin Feng also knew that, which was why he wildly jumped onto her bed. After that, he suddenly grabbed her and pulled her down next to him. Both of them were lying very close to each other. Their lips were only a few inches apart. Meng Qing suddenly looked shy and lowered her head. She didn't dare look Lin Feng in the eyes. When Lin Feng saw that Meng Qing was acting shy, a magnificent smile appeared on his face and he softly wrapped his arms around Meng Qing. He exerted a little bit of force as he pulled her into his chest for an embrace. Meng Qing, if we could lie down and embrace each other forever, I would definitely agree, said Lin Feng in a tender way which made Meng Qing's heart feel warm. Indeed, if they could stay like that forever, how perfect would that be? Both of them wished that it could last forever, so none of them dared break that wonderful moment. They just silently embraced each other. Lin Feng closed his eyes and slowly fell asleep. Lin Feng fell into a deep sleep. He was sleeping so peacefully and happily, he was extremely relaxed. Even though he slept regularly, he usually wasn't as relaxed and couldn't sleep as deeply as he did now. He hadn't been able to fall so deeply asleep in a long time. He was always thinking about his problems and the dangers around him, so he never managed to sleep well, but with Meng Qing in his arms, his heart finally felt peaceful. 2 days later, while Lin Feng was cultivating when he received an invitation letter. It was a very simple letter with huge letters. In 7 days, on the night of the full moon, the national competition will begin at the Xiangjiang Lake. Your Excellency Lin Feng is invited. That was the content of the letter. There was no name or no indication of where it came from, but Lin Feng perfectly understood what it meant. Besides, he had already heard a great deal about the national competition of Shuiyu. A short time before, Chu Zhanpeng had come to fight against him and they had agreed to fight at the competition of Shuiyu. All the geniuses of Shuiyu would enter the competition for a chance to show their amazing prowess. At the same time, it was also the best way to select the top young cultivators for the great competition of Shuiyu. The people from the empire would come to observe and monitor to select who would participate at the great competition, the stage in which the most outstanding geniuses from the 13 countries would fight. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the sky. Sharp lights were twinkling in his eyes. He had wanted to see that competition with his own eyes for a while. He wanted to see how outstanding the geniuses of Shuiyu really were. So, in 7 days I'll need to be at Xiangjiang Lake. The crescent moon was floating in the black sky and there was no stars in sight. The night felt lonely and cold. The crescent moon was floating in the black sky and there was no stars in sight. The night felt lonely and cold. In 7 days there will be a full moon. Lin Feng whispered to himself. Lin Feng had heard about the national competition of Shuiyu before, but he didn't know any concrete details about it. It seemed like it was organized by the imperial family and the Duan clan. It seemed like they were the ones inviting people. More precisely, it was the king of Shuiyu, who was also the head of the Duan clan. But that detail was useless. Lin Feng only knew that there were going to be battles and he was going to have to fight too. Chu Zhanpeng was the 6th-ranked high official of Shuiyu. In the past, he used to be the best disciple of the Haoyu sect. The first time Lin Feng saw him, Chu Zhanpeng was extremely arrogant. He had come to the Yunhai sect and wanted them to deliver Lin Feng to him. Back then, Elder Mo Xia even accepted his demands. If Protector Kong hadn't appeared in the form of a shadow, Lin Feng would already be dead. It was clear to Lin Feng that Chu Zhanpeng was still as arrogant as before and considered Lin Feng to be an insect, a nobody. Chu Zhanpeng frequently humiliated Lin Feng after they met at the Yunhai sect. A short time before, he had even gone to the Celestial Academy and displayed his strength. He came looking for Lin Feng again. Lin Feng clearly remembered all the past grudges. Lin Feng needed to forget about that hatred and animosity. What he needed to do was prove to Chu Zhanpeng that he was not able to bully him the way he did. When Lin Feng thought about Chu Zhanpeng, he also remembered the time when he was only at the Qi layer. He was a weak young boy. After having broken through to the Ling Qi layer, he felt so high-spirited and vigorous. He didn't want to see the Yunhai sect get annihilated. The Yunhai sect had sacrificed themselves to protect Lin Feng and save his life. Protector Kong and Nan Gongling were killed as Protector Bei helped him escape. Lin Feng would never forget the bloodbath of the Yunhai sect. It was tragic. Lin Feng could never forget that the ring he had on his finger was the ring worn only by the patriarch of the Yunhai sect. Everybody trusted Lin Feng and they put all of their hopes of the future in him. Just wait until I'm strong enough, the Yunhai sect will reappear in Shuiyu, thought Lin Feng while looking at the bright moon above. Rivers of blood had been spilt, it couldn't be in vain. Lin Feng would rebuild the Yunhai sect and he would avenge the bloodbath of those who came before him. Lin Feng would honor the dead of the Yunhai sect. The sound of somebody's steps interrupted Lin Feng in his thoughts. Those steps were becoming louder and louder as Lin Feng saw a young man appear who was walking slowly. Lin Feng, big brother, shouted that young man with a faint smile. He looked at Lin Feng with his eyes full of respect. Duan Feng, why are you not resting? Said Lin Feng while smiling. Lin Feng envied Duan Feng sometimes. His heart was so pure, there wasn't an iota of hatred to corrupt his heart. He was still so pure and innocent. He didn't have any obligations and worries, all he needed to do was focus on his cultivation. On the other hand, Lin Feng had a great deal of things to worry about. For example, he was carrying the fate of the entire Yunhai sect on his shoulders. He also needed to find his father who seemed to have gone missing. I can't sleep, replied Duan Feng while walking towards him. There was a letter in his hand. He handed it over to Lin Feng. What's this? Asked Lin Feng while glancing at Duan Feng. He then grabbed the letter and read it. There was just a simple text on it. In 7 days, on the night of the full moon, the national competition will happen at Xiangjiang Lake. Your Excellency Duan Feng is invited. Lin Feng had received the same letter. It had been sent by the same person. Duan Feng, you also received an invitation, congratulations, said Lin Feng while slightly smiling. Only the most talented young cultivators of Shuiyu received it, and Duan Feng was proof of that. But Lin Feng, big brother, only you and a few others know that I have broken through to the Xianqi layer. I haven't told any outsider. How did they know? Duan Feng sounded anxious and continued, I don't think that they would bother inviting a cultivator of the Lingqi layer. Young and powerful cultivators who have reached the Xianqi layer is what they are looking for. You haven't told anyone? Lin Feng was surprised. Indeed, Shuiyu was a vast country. The imperial city itself had a myriad of extremely young yet strong cultivators. Inviting members of the Lingqi layer would be meaningless for them. What Duan Feng said was true. They were only interested in cultivators of the Xianqi layer, as a minimum requirement. But Duan Feng was saying that he had told nobody else about it. How could they know that he had broken through to the Xianqi layer? The water of Shuiyu is deeper than what I had imagined. Lin Feng thought with a smile while shaking his head. If he couldn't find the answer, it wasn't necessary to drive himself nuts over it. He then said to Duan Feng, since you received that letter, just relax, don't drive yourself crazy. It might also be due to your incredible natural abilities. In 7 days, we will go to Xiangjiang Lake together. All right, nodded Duan Feng, but then he slightly frowned and said, while looking at Lin Feng, there is something else I would like to tell you. What is it? Asked Lin Feng. He was a bit surprised when he saw that Duan Feng frowning. Duan Feng had been always pure and innocent, and was always smiling. Lin Feng was wondering what was going on. It seemed like he had something heavy in his heart. Lin Feng, you remember when you asked me that question last time, where I had gotten that incredible skill? Asked Duan Feng, which surprised Lin Feng. Duan Feng was talking about this again. Was he hiding something? Didn't you say that you found it in your memories? Asked Lin Feng. Indeed, I found that skill in my memories, said Duan Feng while slightly nodding, but then continued, but while my cultivation increases, new memories appear in my brain as well. Each time I progress, new memories appear, but they don't belong to me. I never had memories of them before, but there are some amazingly powerful skills and techniques that appear. It's extremely strange. Huh? When Lin Feng heard Duan Feng, he was stupefied. New memories were appearing in his brain as his cultivation increased. It was indeed very strange. Could it be that somebody sealed your memories, and as your cultivation increases, the seals open themselves? Guessed Lin Feng, but he wasn't sure. If someone could seal memories inside somebody's brain and make the seal open by itself as the person's cultivation increased, how terrifying would that person be? There was probably nobody in Shuiyu who could achieve such a thing. Duan Feng, your father and mother, suddenly said Lin Feng. But Duanfen immediately shook his head and said, Lin Feng, brother, I have never met my parents, I only know that I have the blood spirit of the imperial clan. I only know that they have been transported to a distant place to be punished. I've always been in that small village where I lived an aristocratic life, but I don't even know who my father is. Lin Feng frowned. Duanfeng had never seen his own parents, those memories were extremely strange. But if nobody had sealed those memories in his brain, what other explanation could there be? Could it be a sort of sixth sense? If it was, his natural abilities were even more terrifying. Lin Feng, there is something else, not only does my cultivation increase extremely quickly but I also learn skills and techniques very quickly, as if I already know them. I only read them once and then I am already able to use them. I have tried to practice skills which were not part of my memories and it was extremely difficult, even if they were only low-level ones. Continued Duanfeng. Lin Feng was growing more and more surprised and had also started to frown. How strange. Why? Lin Feng had no idea. He looked pensive for a while but then he smiled and said, Duanfeng, being able to practice cultivation quickly is a great thing, maybe you really have a sixth sense or a strange ability that you know nothing about. Since you don't understand it, don't drive yourself crazy because of it. I will ask Senior Yenyu for you next time. Duanfeng nodded. He wanted to understand it but couldn't and it was driving him insane. He couldn't practice calmly as it was always on his mind. No matter what, being able to cultivate quickly and easily was always a great thing. Lin Feng, brother, I will go back now. You should rest too, said Duanfeng. Lin Feng slightly nodded and Duanfeng left. But Lin Feng stayed at the same place, calmly looking at the crescent moon. He stayed there all night. During the following day, the news that the imperial city had been sending invitation letters spread quickly, and then the news was spread through the entire country. Those who received an invitation became the focus of everybody's attention. That letter was the proof that a cultivator was both extremely strong and talented. Those who had received it were the most outstanding amongst the young cultivators. That letter was the proof that a cultivator was both extremely strong and talented. Those who had received it were the most outstanding amongst the young cultivators. Besides, those who hadn't received a letter were gathering on the bank of the lake. They wanted to personally observe the most outstanding disciples of Shuiyu. Being able to see the extremely strong cultivators displaying their strength was a rare sight, so it was a good opportunity for the masses. There weren't only members of the imperial city who had gathered, there were people from all parts of Shuiyu. Everybody was interested in the national competition. Everybody wanted to see how strong the geniuses of Shuiyu really were and how high their natural abilities were. They would also be able to see the difference between them. Finally, on the fifth day, the imperial government of Shuiyu gave the order to start a blockade. People could leave the imperial city but were no longer allowed entry. There were too many people who had gathered in the imperial city. People were pushing and squeezing past each other on the incredibly large roads which would normally allow 1,000 people to walk shoulder to shoulder with space between. The order to start a blockade made the people who were waiting to enter grow furious. They regretted traveling across such a distance only to be too late. At that moment, they couldn't enter the imperial city, it wouldn't be possible to see the national competition. The atmosphere in the imperial city was extremely agitated, bustling, and lively. Everybody was extremely impatient, until finally, the seventh day arrived. The Xiangjiang Lake was situated in the northern district of the imperial city. The lake was only a few hundred yards wide, but it was a few dozen miles in length. From one side of the lake, it was impossible to see the other side. The Xiangjiang Lake was extremely long. Early in the morning, both sides of the lake were covered with people from above. Those crowds of people moving looked like dragons. They covered an area of a few dozen miles. The sight was incredible. If those people all stomped onto the ground at the same time, it would flip the entire lake upside down. The atmosphere was extremely noisy around the lake. No matter if they knew each other or not, the people were all talking to each other. They were all discussing the strong cultivators who might have received invitation letters. They were all trying to guess how many cultivators there would be and where they were from. Of course, when many people gathered together, there was also tension and conflicts. Some of the people wanted to be on the very bank of the lake, but others wouldn't let them go ahead of them. Clouds of dust could be seen in many places due to the fact that many people were fighting each other to get a better view. It didn't look too important though. From above, those battles just looked like a small ripple in the sea of people, and after a period of time, all the battles had come to a conclusion. Time was passing very slowly for the audience and everybody was excited for the arrival of the night. Time seemed to be passing much slower. It seemed like they had waited for 100 days for it to become night. The more impatient they were, the slower the time passed. As the time passed and the scarlet-red sun started shining down on the lake. While the sun was setting in one part of the sky, the full moon was appearing in another. People's heartbeats were beating faster and faster. Soon, the national competition would begin. They had been waiting for that for such a long time. In the distance, a group of people appeared. They were standing on a gigantic beast and they were flying at full speed. The one who seemed to be their leader looked majestic. He had a very commanding presence. Those people immediately moved onto the bank of the lake. That place was reserved for them. There were already some soldiers blocking people from entering that area. How you sect? The crowd was stupefied. The people who had just landed were holding a flag which was fluttering in the wind. On that flag, there were words written in a flamboyant style calligraphy. Haoyue sect was written in huge characters. The imperial city had invited some outstanding young cultivators, but they had also invited the biggest sects and clans of the country. They would obviously invite the Haoyu sect. The majestic-looking leader was the patriarch of the Haoyu sect, Chu Qing. I heard that 2 disciples of the Haoyu sect have been invited. One of them is Chu Zhanpeng. There's no need for me to remind you how strong he is, and the other is a core disciple of the Haoyu sect, Jiang Shan. He seemingly broke through to the Xian Qi layer and was invited as well. Discussions broke out when they saw the Haoyu sect. What about the Blade Master, Ling Yu? I've heard that the Haoyu sect has a genius called Ling Yu. His nickname is the Blade Master. Even though he is only the second-ranked core disciple, his natural abilities are even higher than those of Jiang Shan. He is definitely going to be a high official in the future. Where is he? Is he coming or not? I've also heard about him. It is said that he is abnormally fast and if he takes out his blade, someone will die. Nobody can dodge his attacks, but it's been a while since I have heard anything about him. Besides, some people even say that he's gone missing. 2 people were talking about the Blade Master. They couldn't know that they would never see the Blade Master because he was already killed by Lin Feng. Very few people knew about that encounter. The news hadn't even reached the public in Imperial City, therefore, the fact that the people in the crowd didn't know about it was very normal. Is that snow? The members of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village are here. At that moment, some people noticed that snow was forming on the horizon, as if the moon itself was going to be frozen. A layer of ice appeared on the ground beneath them and a thick snow fell from the sky. At the same time, there were people who could be seen traveling across the ice and snow. They were obviously the members of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village. However, what astonished many people within the crowd was that the group of people was very small. There were only a few people in their group. Once again, very few people in the country knew about the battle in Celestial River, where a large force of cultivators from the Ice and Snow Mountain Village were killed. They had charged there to kill Lin Feng and never returned. The members of the Luo Xia sect have arrived. Sighed some other people surprised. The setting sun was shining upon another group of people on the horizon. The group of people looked extremely desolate and unapproachable as they moved with the setting sun shining down on them. They also had a location reserved for them. The Luo Xia sect comes from such a remote location in the country. They also never mix with other people. I wouldn't have thought that they would come to the competition. The patriarch of their sect, Gu Chunqiu, has personally come as well, said some of the seniors in the crowd when they saw Gu Chunqiu, the patriarch of the Luoxia sect. The crowd was astonished because Gu Chunqiu was the strangest and most reclusive of all the patriarchs. He looked glum, as if he was surrounded by hardships and problems. The Luoxia sect and the Ice and Snow Mountain village were the same. They had gone to Celestial River to acquire the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron. Wu Gang offended Lin Feng because he wanted to use him as a scapegoat for his own cowardice, and because of that, the cultivators and elders of the Luoxia sect were all slaughtered. How could Gu Chunqiu not look glum? He remembered Lin Feng, but in Celestial River, there had been a monstrously evil cultivator who killed everyone who went for the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron and left no survivors, so Gu Chunqiu had thought that Lin Feng was killed at that time. However, when Lin Feng's name started to spread in the Imperial City again, Gu Chunqiu heard the rumors and knew that he was still alive. This time, Gu Chunqiu had come to the Imperial City for one reason, to kill Lin Feng. The sun was gradually setting on the horizon. The members of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu, the Yu clan and of the Wan Shou sect also started arriving. They all had reserved spots, so they did not need to arrive early. All the greatest spheres of influence in the country had their own reserved location, and in the middle of everyone, there was a huge empty location. It was the lake. On the side of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu, two silhouettes appeared in the sky above them. Chu Zhanpeng immediately landed in front of the crowd of the Haoyu sect. "Father!" shouted Chu Zhanpeng while looking at Chu Qing. "Zhanpeng, this time, you know what you have to do, right?" said Chu Qing while looking at Chu Zhanpeng. "Don't worry, father, even if Lin Feng hadn't killed Leng Yu, I would have killed him anyway," said Chu Zhanpeng with sharp lights twinkling in his eyes. Lin Feng needed to be dealt with before it was too late. At the same time, the members of the Ice and Snow Mountain village were having the same conversation as well. They had lost so many people in Celestial River, now they had an occasion to kill Lin Feng, they couldn't let the opportunity slip by. They all wanted to kill Lin Feng. The Haoyu sect and the Ice and Snow Mountain village were all the same, even the Luoxia sect, the Wan Shou sect and the Yu clan wanted to use this opportunity to kill him. Actually, they already had enmity with Lin Feng from the moment they destroyed the Yunhai sect. Even without everything that had happened after that, they needed to destroy the roots and kill Lin Feng. While the sun was setting, the full moon was rising. While the sun was setting, the full moon was rising. The full moon looked cold and desolate, it was illuminating the water of the lake and the people below with a pale moonlight. In the distance, a sound spread through the air which surprised the crowd. What had they just heard? The crowd gazed into the distance and saw 9 dragons moving through the air. The sound of dragons roaring could be heard as the dragons weaved around each other. They were far in the distance, but the sound was loud and clear for everyone. The most shocking was that in the middle of those 9 dragons, there was a throne. It was a golden throne. On the curtains surrounding that throne, there were multiple depictions of dragons. At the same time, surrounding that throne, there was an army of strong cultivators flying through the sky in perfect formation. Those people had sharp expressions in their eyes and the qi they were releasing was monstrously brutal. The king. The crowd was shivering when they saw the spectacle. How majestic! He was being carried by 9 dragons and the army's strong cultivators were flying in formation to clear the path. How astonishing! Everybody had already guessed who that person was, the king of Shuiyu. Roar! The 9 dragons roared with a majestic magnificence and the sound echoed in everyone's ears. When they saw the king, the entire population started to bow. The king was arriving and his arrival was accompanied by 9 dragons. The king has even come to the national competition. Thought the people in the crowd, they were all surprised. It seemed like this competition was going to be extremely important, the king even came in person. The national competition was similar to the Great Competition of Shuiyu. It was something that happened every 10 years, but for many people, they wouldn't get to see the king in their entire lifetime. The 9 dragons flew down from the sky and immediately dove into the water. After a moment, the tops of the dragons flew out from the surface of the lake. They looked very skillful and agile. Those 9 dragons could fly through the sky and swim in the water, but the strangest thing was that the water of the lake didn't even move from the dragons' movements. At that moment, the crowd was astonished by the spectacle of the 9 dragons. Their hearts were pounding out of their chests. Those 9 dragons were all dozens of meters in size. They could move through the water without even a ripple appearing. How majestic! The entire atmosphere became calm. At that moment, nobody dared say a word. They were all looking at the throne, which was now slightly above the surface of the water. Go! A low voice sounded out but was distinctly loud enough for the entire crowd to hear. When that person finished talking, the 9 dragons shot into the air. What are they doing? Wondered some people while shaking from the presence of the dragons. Those 9 dragons arrived in the sky and started flying in circles, which created a cyclone around them as it absorbed all of the clouds in the sky. A monstrously powerful chi rolled through the air as the 9 dragons started to revolve. The 9 dragons were roaring unceasingly and the throne looked lonely above the lake. It calmly hung in suspension above the water of the lake, but it wasn't falling at all, it was just oscillating a little as it floated in the air. It was very intriguing. Finally, the 9 dragons stopped moving and dove back into the lake and appeared on the surface. At that moment, a huge circle appeared in the sky and created a dark barrier beneath. That circular barrier was formed by dark chi. It seemed like the 9 dragons had been revolving in the air to create this barrier. The Great Competition of Shuiyu occurs every 10 years. People from all across the 13 countries participate. There are many outstanding young cultivators. All those who have joined the Great Competition of Shuiyu, if they were not killed during the competition, they came back as heroes, generals, nobles, or just extremely strong cultivators in general. This time, all the outstanding young cultivators of Shuiyu will have a chance, an incredible chance. Said a voice coming from inside the curtains, where the throne was. However, the people situated kilometers away could still hear that voice distinctly. That voice sounded evil and it moved in every direction, piercing into people's ears. Those who have joined the Great Competition of Shuiyu before have become extremely strong cultivators or generals. When the crowd heard those words, their hearts started pounding violently. The 4 who had come back from the Great Competition of Shuiyu 9 years ago and 18 years ago had already become so strong that nobody in Shuiyu would dare to provoke them. Those people had become the most outstanding cultivators of the country. People from all across the 13 countries of Shuiyu would join the Great Competition of Shuiyu. How incredible was that? Many people yearned for it night and day, but they were only able to spectate because they weren't strong enough. I am absolutely not exaggerating to scare or entice you. You all have to understand that Shuiyu is extremely vast. There are 13 countries and our country is the one of the smaller and weaker ones. Every country has a myriad of strong cultivators. If you want to join the Great Competition of Shuiyu, you have to seize that opportunity and only then will you be able to compete with the geniuses of the other countries. You will be gaining invaluable experience and a greater understanding of many things. You will also be able to strengthen your body to new and unimaginable heights. Joining the Great Competition of Shuiyu has multiple advantages. It doesn't just change your cultivation, it changes your destiny. Nobody can anticipate your future if you attend. Said the voice slowly. Everybody was calmly listening to those words. The Great Competition of Shuiyu could change a person's destiny. If they could join the Great Competition of Shuiyu, they would also be able to leave the country of Shuiyu and learn from powerful foreign cultivators. But if you want to join the Great Competition of Shuiyu, I first have to see the level of your strength and just how gifted you are. Only after seeing your potential, will you have a chance of being presented to the Emperor, who will then choose the final cultivators personally. Continued the voice slowly before continuing. This time, I invited the most gifted young cultivators of Shuiyu. You all have a chance. Those of you who have received my letter, please come through the dark barrier and into the middle of the circle. This will be the first selection process. Of course, the 8 high officials do not need to go through that test. Selection test. The crowd understood why the 9 dragons had created a circle of chi at that moment. It was to see if those who had received a letter could penetrate the barrier. What incredible effect would it have? The 8 high officials didn't need to go through that test. In other words, they didn't have to sit through the first test. Here I come, shouted a young cultivator. That person flew into the sky and immediately dived into the dark barrier. However, in the blink of an eye, the dark chi enveloped that person and they completely disappeared. Not even chi was left. What is going on? The crowd was frowning. That person had been swallowed by the darkness. It seemed that entering that dark barrier was extremely difficult. The first selection round had started. The next person who entered into the black barrier finally gave a horrible shriek. Waves rolled over that black barrier and then the person who entered rushed back out, but immediately fell into the water. The next person who entered into the black barrier finally gave a horrible shriek. Waves rolled over that black barrier and then the person who entered rushed back out, but immediately fell into the water. The flood dragons roared. One of them then rose up and rushed towards the person's body. It opened its huge jaws and swallowed him with a single bite. That person's entire body was sent into the stomach of a dragon. What's going on? The people's hearts started pounding violently. Was he dead? That person wasn't strong enough to enter the dark chi. His body seemed to have been burnt by that black barrier and he was immediately swallowed by the dragon when he left the barrier. How terrifying! Those who haven't received an invitation letter shouldn't try. I have invited every single outstanding young cultivator in Shuiyu. If you still try without an invitation, you are just committing suicide, said a faintly discernible voice again, which astonished people. The one who had just been swallowed by the dragon wasn't one of the people who received an invitation letter. People without the invitation letters shouldn't try, otherwise they would suffer the same fate. Besides, those who have received an invitation letter should announce their name before entering the black barrier through the poisonous black fog, and the time allocated for everyone here is the time it takes for an oil lamp requires to go out. It's poison. That black barrier is made of toxic fog. Poison is surrounding those black barrier. The crowd was slightly startled. The king was saying that he hadn't forgotten to invite a single person in the country. How confident. At that moment, 2 silhouettes appeared in the sky. They were extremely young. It was a pair who seemed to be a young girl and a young boy. The boy looked handsome and the girl was beautiful. When the people below saw them, they couldn't help but sigh with admiration. The only bad thing about them was that the 2 people looked unbearably arrogant. That young man glanced at the crowd and said in an indifferent tone, "You all better hurry up, don't waste my time." Huh? Waste his time? That guy was exactly as he looked, arrogant. How insufferably arrogant. He sounded like he was the protagonist of the entire event. The other people were only there as a side show which wasted his time. "We are from Yendang Mountain, we belong to the Ling clan," said the young man again. Yendang Mountain? The Ling clan. Many people had never heard those names before, which surprised them. But those 2 people had received an invitation letter, so they were probably outstanding. However, the majority of people didn't know about the Ling clan. However, a few old men looked a bit surprised. If he was from Yendang Mountain, he was probably their son. "From today, remember my name and remember it well. My name is Ling Tian," said that young man when he saw that many people looked shocked. He sounded even more arrogant than before. Immediately after, the crowd only saw Ling Tian step into that black poisonous fog. Under the light of the full moon, a light emerged from the black barrier. How quick! Ling Tian was so fast that it looked incredible. The crowd couldn't even follow his figure with their eyes. A light sound emerged as waves appeared on the black barrier. It looked like a slice had been created in the barrier, creating a pathway. Ling Tian and the girl then walked towards it and moved through the pathway they created. What quick sword play! That was extremely powerful. No wonder that he is that arrogant, thought the people in the crowd. That person's name was Ling Tian and he was the first person to enter into the black barrier. After Ling Tian entered the barrier, another silhouette shot into the sky. The figure then stopped, and immediately dashed towards the depths of the black barrier. As the person was about to make contact, he shouted, "Officer of the Imperial City Guards, Shi Qiong." While Shi Qiong was moving, a flood dragon appeared and as he attacked, it roared aggressively. He then penetrated into the depths of the black barrier and through the poisonous fog. Shi Qiong and his flood dragon both penetrated into the poisonous fog. Flood dragon, he has a flood dragon spirit. The crowd was surprised. The officer of the Imperial City Guards was extremely strong. They were wondering if he might even be as strong as Ling Tian. After Shi Qiong entered the black fog, 3 other silhouettes flew into the sky towards the black fog. Those 3 people glanced at each other and continued diving. "Dugu clan, Dugu Yi," said a cold and detached voice. That was another genius. He then immediately released a terrifying chi of the 3rd Xian chi layer, and then pierced into the black poisonous fog. "How you sect, Jiang Shan," said another person while releasing a mountain spirit. His entire body looked like a towering mountain at that point. He then entered the black fog which surrounded his entire body, but couldn't seem to cause the mountain to move back at all. "Luo Xia sect, Luo Yun Tian." A mysterious chi filled the atmosphere and surrounded the black poisonous fog before piercing inside. Luo Yun Tian then followed the chi he had released and entered the black poisonous fog. Those 3 people all had a method to deal with the black barrier and they all looked extremely relaxed while entering it. All of them were very young. It was clear that they were the most outstanding young people of the generation. The crowd was amazed. The geniuses of Xueyu were numerous. They were wondering just how many geniuses there were. After that, more and more people entered the black poisonous fog relying on their own methods. In the black fog, there was members of the imperial clan, the Wanshou sect. There were also some high-ranking officials of the court. But there were also some unknown young people. After a short time, there were already 29 gathered in the poisonous fog. Those 29 figures were all abnormally strong young cultivators. It seemed like each of them was just as strong as the 8 high officials of Xueyu, if not stronger. The event could have changed its name to the National Genius Gathering. People in the crowd could see that they were unable to rival the young cultivators in terms of natural abilities and strength. Most people still had cultivate for a long time and improved their cultivation with extreme difficulty. Only 29 people. Wondered the crowd at that moment. The oil lamp was about to go out. No. Some people haven't arrived yet. Lin Feng hasn't arrived yet, thought many people from the crowd. They had all thought of the same name, Lin Feng. Lin Feng had killed 12 Xian Qi layer cultivators of the Wanshou sect and 5 of their Xian level beasts, therefore, him not having received an invitation seemed impossible. The crowd weren't the only people to notice Lin Feng's absence. All those who wanted to kill Lin Feng also noticed that he hadn't arrived yet. On the side of the holy courtyard of Xueyu, Chu Zhanpeng was looking at the members of the Celestial Academy. He then said in a cold and detached way, "Didn't the Celestial Academy say that they were going to join the national competition? Where are these people then?" The one representing the Celestial Academy, Vice Principal Long Ding, just glanced at Chu Zhanpeng in an indifferent way and then ignored him. In fact, he didn't know where Lin Feng was. He wasn't going to put pressure on Lin Feng anyway. It was Lin Feng's own business. Of course, Long Ding was still convinced that Lin Feng would come. There isn't a single genius at the Celestial Academy, that's why they would never dare to join the competition. Joked Chu Zhanpeng with the aim of tarnishing the image of the Celestial Academy. The Celestial Academy is composed of a bunch of weaklings, cowards and trash, that's all. They don't have a single genius, how can they even call themselves an academic institution? The Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu is a real academic institution, they can't compete with us. Various comments were spreading within the group of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. They were all meticulously adding humiliating statements about the Celestial Academy while increasing the reputation of the Holy Courtyard. The majestic and incredible Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu stole the most outstanding disciples from the largest sects of Shuiyu. Its aim was to become one of the most influential and powerful academies in the country, but now, it's been 2 years since the academy began and it has nothing good to show for it. Apart from 2 high officials of whom they are so proud of taking from other sects, not a single genius has actually risen from their ranks. All that the students of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu are able to do is brag and create a disturbance once in a while. How pitiful they are! A voice echoed from the distance and thundered through the atmosphere. That voice seemed to be as calm as a tranquil lake and as cold as freezing waters. Duan Tian Lang, you only know how to raise cowardly cultivators. All those people that you took from other sects that were strong and had high natural abilities have now become a bunch of scared chickens and pitiful dogs. Are you not ashamed of yourself? When the people heard that voice, they were astonished and various comments started spreading. Those 2 statements were extremely aggressive and clear, it was a verbal attack which targeted the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. That person was even calling its students a bunch of chickens and dogs. The same person was even insulting Duan Tian Lang and saying that he could only teach them how to be cowardly. At the same time, that person was asserting that the only pride of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu was the 2 high officials who had that status when they joined the institution, Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui. That voice wasn't loud as it entered everyone's ears, but it sounded extremely aggressive. In the distance, 2 bamboo rafts appeared on the water, they were calmly floating against the current at a shocking speed. There were 3 people inside those rafts. There was an extremely young man on one of those bamboo rafts, he was only about 16 years old, he looked handsome and had an honest bearing. While on the other bamboo raft, there were 2 other people, a boy and a girl. The young man looked handsome, smart and clean. His facial expression looked as limpid and deep as the waters of the lake. The young woman had a fine veil covering her face. The full moon seemed to illuminate her entire body, she looked like a celestial being. She was extremely beautiful and almost looked like she had come out of a painting. When looking at her, one had the feeling that she wasn't from the mortal world. What a beautiful scene! Thought the crowd. That scene looked so beautiful. They were not giving off a majestic air and there was no powerful energy floating around them. Those 3 people looked like they were deities as they crossed the lake. Lin Feng. When the people in the crowd saw a winged tiger was also on the bamboo raft, they narrowed their eyes, it was Lin Feng. Many people were looking at Lin Feng with murderous expressions in their eyes, especially the members of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui's faces were filled with killing intent. Many people were looking at Lin Feng with murderous expressions in their eyes, especially the members of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui's faces were filled with killing intent. Duan Tian Lang's facial expression looked piercingly cold. Duan Tian Lang didn't look as graceful and elegant as in the past. His hair wasn't black anymore, it had turned white, he looked miserable and lonely. It seemed like he had become much older in the short span of time. However, his eyes looked the same as before, they looked evil and much colder, so cold that that coldness was piercing to the bones. Duan Tian Lang's cultivation had also increased. When Lin Feng saw Duan Tian Lang's eyes, he also guessed that he hadn't been wasting his time in self-pity, his cultivation and dangerous aura had clearly increased. Lin Feng didn't know that after he killed Duan Han, Duan Tianlang's hair had turned pure white and he completely lost his interest in the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. He dedicated his entire time to cultivating. He was looking forward to meeting Lin Feng again in order to kill him. He was expecting the day when he would be able to avenge his son's death. Lin Feng just said that Duan Tianlang didn't know how to educate cultivators properly, which made Duan Tianlang release a stream of deadly qi. That deadly qi destabilized the bamboo raft which Lin Feng was aboard. It caused the water of the lake to grow uneasy. Lin Feng, you will soon regret everything that you have done. Soon you will kneel down in front of me, said Chu Zhanpeng, sounding detached. He looked like he thought he was an emperor standing above the rest of the world. How long would Lin Feng continue smiling? 2 years ago, you came to the Yunhai sect. You wanted to kill me. Back then you were already one of the 8 high officials, and I was only a weakling of the Qi layer. Even then, I wasn't afraid of you and wouldn't kneel before you. Now, 2 years have passed and I have long since left the Qi layer. During this time I have broke through the Ling Qi layer and advanced all the way to the second Xian Qi layer, but you are barely stronger than you were back then. How pitiful. The worst thing is that you actually seem pleased with yourself. On top of that, you think that now you are finally strong enough to make me kneel in front of you. It's both sad and amusing at the same time, joked Lin Feng, which astonished everyone present. Chu Zhanpeng and Lin Feng had known each other for 2 years and they had been at odds ever since. Back then, Chu Zhanpeng was already one of the 8 high officials and Lin Feng was only at the Qi layer. Back then, in Chu Zhanpeng's eyes, Lin Feng was only an insignificant insect, a nobody. 2 years. From the Qi layer to the second Xian Qi layer. What amazing natural abilities, thought the crowd while sighing. Lin Feng used to be much weaker than everyone present. And now he had becoming the most dazzling cultivator in Shuiyu. In comparison with Lin Feng, Chu Zhanpeng had really progressed at a snail's pace, but it was clear to everybody that the higher a person cultivated, the harder it was to improve. At high cultivation levels, breaking through to the next layer was extremely difficult. Brother, it seems like his cultivation speed is even faster than yours, said the girl on Ling Tian's side at that moment while smiling radiantly, which made an extreme coldness invade Ling Tian's face. He groaned coldly and said, so what? Even if his cultivation speed is good, he has only broken through to the second Xian Qi layer, that's all. I destroyed his statue in Yangzhou City and I can destroy him anytime if I wanted to. Of course, you have broken through to the third Xian Qi layer and your sword is as fast as lightning, you could easily kill him, said the young girl while smiling, which made Ling Tian's facial expression look slightly better. While looking proud of himself, Ling Tian replied, that's obvious, yes. But at that moment, Ling Tian was thinking something to the contrary. He killed 12 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer a short time ago. And 3 of them had broken through to the third Xian Qi layer. None of them was able to escape with their life. They were slaughtered like chickens. His battle ability cannot be underestimated, it's monstrous. If he doesn't offend me, I will not go out of my way to offend him. Even though Ling Tian was arrogant and proud, he wasn't stupid. If he wanted to kill 12 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer, he could, but it would still require a strenuous effort. However, Lin Feng managed to do it. It was quite clear from that how strong he was. The young girl looked pensive. Brother, you have broken through to the third Xian Qi layer and Lin Feng has broken through to the second Xian Qi layer. However, he is much stronger than some cultivators of the third Xian Qi layer. If you fight against him, it might be an extremely difficult battle. Maybe by relying on your extremely quick sword, you could win, but it would be a costly victory. The best option would be for you and him to not fight each other, thought the young girl. When she had heard that Lin Feng had killed 12 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer, she was extremely surprised by the event. She wouldn't have thought that the insignificant Marquis of Yangzhou City was so strong. Chu Zhanpeng's facial expression looked ice cold, and he then said while fixedly staring at Lin Feng, you will regret everything. Humph. Lin Feng gave a cold smile, then just ignored Chu Zhanpeng. He raised his head and looked at the people on the banks of the lake. Duanren City, my name is Yunfei Yang. At that moment, far away in the distance, a silhouette appeared. That person was flying through the sky. That person was as fast as an illusion. Even though I haven't received an invitation letter, I think the geniuses of Shuiyu and I can learn from each other, don't blame me. That person's voice filled the atmosphere. They then immediately entered the black fog without anything to protect themselves at all. While that person was moving through the black fog started to move in an insane way and opened itself, allowing that person move through it. Yunfei Yang could easily move through the middle of the barrier. He hasn't received an invitation letter. The crowd was astonished. Immediately after, they looked at the throne above the water. Didn't he say that he hadn't forgotten anybody in the entire country? That Yunfei Yang was monstrously strong though. Since you have the necessary strength, you can, said the king, sounding natural and unrestrained. Duanren City. Lin Feng was astonished. He hadn't heard news of Duanren City in a very long time. The city he had set on fire surprisingly gave birth to a genius. Lin Feng then looked at that person. Yunfei Yang's voice sounded heroic, his smile looked natural and unrestrained, his entire body looked like it contained the strength of 1,000 mountains. He also looked like he had more hidden cards than what he was showing. Had that person really come from the border of Shuiyu? Or did he come from the other side of the border? Was he a foreigner? The oil lamp will go out soon, said a voice coming from the direction of the throne. Lin Feng and Meng Qing glanced at each other while smiling. Immediately after, their bodies rose up into the air and they moved towards the black fog. But Lin Feng didn't use his strength to break through the black fog, he just floated high into the sky and then slowly moved inside the barrier through the hole in the top. He calmly flew over the fog and over the top of black barrier and landed inside. Duan Feng didn't follow him, even though he had received an invitation letter, he was convinced that it wasn't the right time to expose his strength. He just wanted to observe them. When the crowd saw Lin Feng's actions, they were speechless. Lin Feng didn't go through the black fog and simply flew into the hole at the top. Was that allowed? That guy. The crowd was speechless. The black fog was surrounding the black barrier. Everybody knew that they could enter the barrier from the hole in the top of the circle, but nobody had dared to do that. It was competition for geniuses. Wasn't that method too simple? Wasn't it too humiliating? The king had even said that the poisonous black fog was surrounding the black barrier so it would prevent many people from reaching it, but if everybody just flew over the top of it like Lin Feng, then couldn't everyone reach the inside of the black barrier? Lin Feng didn't care, he didn't think the same way as the others, he didn't need to waste his strength on the black barrier creating a majestic show when there was a path already open. Lin Feng moved like a shadow, he was extremely quick, that was already an evidence of how strong he was. Following Yunfei Yang, Lin Feng and Meng Qing then moved inside the black barrier. Inside, the black fog, there were 32 people. The weakest were at the first Xianqi layer, but there were only a few of them. Some of the strongest ones had broken through to the third or fourth Xianqi layer. Such high natural abilities and cultivation in young people was rare, to the extent that many senior cultivators weren't even been able to reach that level. On top of that, amongst those people, none of them were older than 30 years old. "Time's up," said King at that moment while raising his head. Immediately after, he rose into the air, the entire crowd was in front of him and he said, "Everybody come to the edge of the black fog." Huh? Everybody was surprised, he wanted them to move to the edge of the black fog, what did he mean? But they had no right to be disobedient, so they all moved towards the edge of the black fog forming a big arch around the black fog. Those who have received an invitation letter can be considered as the geniuses of Shuiyu, they can remain cool-headed even when their lives are threatened. They are tenacious and have an incredible determination. They are considered authentically strong cultivators because of these qualities. Nobody is allowed to move, said the king slowly. The crowd frowned. Nobody was allowed to move. What did he intend to do? At that moment, the 9 dragons moving over the water started spinning at full speed. They raised their heads and chanted loudly. The black fog then started rolling through the atmosphere. The chi of the black barrier also started undulating in an insane way. It turned into a storm. Besides, the king moved his hands and the black poison seemed to condense. The black poisonous chi started to block the moonlight. It was blotting out the sky and covering up the earth. Then, it moved towards the crowd and enveloped them. In a flash, everybody was swallowed by the black fog. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.